A night in with Mauler and the drinker, getting trashed with the web screen dinkers. A cheap night cause I'm feeling kinda thrifty, got a 10-pack of beers and a bottle of whiskey. Hop off the cork, have a glass of wine, that's feel safe, I'll be fine. Trouble walking in a straight line, but pour me a Pinot Noir. It's open bar with our hosts, Mauler and the critical drinker.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Open Bars, episode 114 now. It's good to have you all here. Cheers to that.
I've been naughty. I had to, okay? I had no choice. I'm already drunk before entering the bar.
Wow. I mean, Rings of Power will do that to you, man.
I love how you just immediately guessed that and it's completely correct. I organized with a friend to watch it, and they said they were drinking, and I was like, all right.
I mean, it's the only way you're going to get through that. I mean, that was nightmarish.
The best part, dude, is that they hadn't seen any Rings of Power, and they said as an experiment they want to see episode 1 of season 1 and episode 8 of season 2 back to back. And I was like, are you sure? They were like, yeah, because it benefits me in terms of having company, but I mean, you're not going to know what the fuck is going on. My favorite highlight of the whole experience was the first scene. You remember it with the guy who's like, "Oh, leave it alone, nah, fears." Remember in season 1?
Yeah.
So remember, that's the first scene you see Waldrig, and I paused it, and I was like, "You see that man there?" And they were like, "Yeah."
That man is going to go on to great things.
I was more explicit. I was like, "That is the creator of Mordor," and they were like, "Oh, do you mean like the artist? That's cool." And I was like, "No, not the actor. No. He creates it in universe," and they were just like silent for a while, like. I have no idea what you mean. And I was like, yeah, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah. Oh, you sweet summer child. You have no idea what's in store for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then we watched the 8th episode. Very funny. Gladly. Yeah. Not as funny as episode 7. I don't think we'll reach peaks like that again, but that's okay.
I mean, we got human porcupine Celebrimbor, so like
yes.
that was we were talking a little bit about that beforehand, and then Galadriel just giving up and throwing herself off a cliff and being totally fine afterwards. So
I will say I enjoyed every Glug scene.
That orc had quite the arc, didn't he?
Yes, it was very amusing.
Well, before we get into all that, I suppose, as has become customary, I'm going to give you a few little things, a few little facts about the year of our Lord, in this case, 2014. And we are rapidly catching up on reality here. So, in terms of news stories, there actually wasn't a huge number of things that I wanted to talk about because there was a lot of doom and gloom that year, a lot of wars and terrorist strikes and all that sort of thing. Robin Williams passed away that year, so that sucked for humanity. But this one did make me chuckle, and I don't know why. It just said solar plant sets birds on fire.
Damn it.
Thousands of birds a year are set on fire mid-flight as they fly over a solar plant in the Mojave Desert, U.S. federal wildlife investigators reported. So yeah, apparently they were misaligned, like with all the mirrors and stuff, and then when the birds flew overhead, they would literally just incinerate them mid-flight, which is horrific.
Imagine seeing that. You'd turn religious if you would.
I think so, yeah.
Oh my god!
I mean, really, the thing is, if a goose flew over it or something, right? There's a chance that it might hit the ground perfectly cooked. So, in a way, you could win from that one, So don't knock it till you've tried it. I would say it's the equivalent of roadkill, but like sky kill, I suppose. But in the subject of movies, though, which is what we're all about here, the top 5 of the year, I didn't know this actually. The biggest movie of the year was Transformers: Age of Extinction. $1.1 billion that made globally.
Which one is that? Is it the 5th one?
They all blend into a big morass of just
I feel
silliness.
Like every time Michael Bay put one out, and he's like, all right, that's it then, is it? And then they're like, no, it made a shit ton. He's like, make another one. They're like, okay, yeah.
Pretty much,
another one. Yeah, fuck it.
The actors get so embarrassed that they drop out, and it's like, fine, we'll just get some new chumps in here who want to start their careers.
Yeah, didn't Mark Wahlberg ended up in one of them, right?
Yeah, he did, yeah. Mark Wahlberg's been in everything. He's probably been in every franchise. Yeah, he's always up for a good payday, is Mark. Next was Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Yep, that was a movie.
Yeah.
Probably rather forget it if I'm honest, but never mind. Guardians of the Galaxy was in third place. Yay. Maleficent was fourth, actually. Didn't think it was that successful, but apparently it was.
The beginning of making Disney villains.
Essentially, yeah. It's like if you've got a female villain at some point, then you can probably do like an origin story where it's actually the patriarchy's fault or something. I don't know.
I'm sure they'll do it for Frollo. Just wait.
Oh, yeah. And in fifth place was one of the 500 Hunger Games movies that they made, apparently. Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 of 12 or something.
Oh, my God.
Because I honestly thought there was only like 4 of them, but apparently not, because they crop up in every fucking stream that we do now. When we ever do these top 5s of the year, there just always is a Hunger Games movie there. It's abuse at this point. But on the plus side, that year also gave us Whiplash. And I'm not talking about the physical injury either. We also got John Wick, Interstellar, A Million Ways to Die in the West, which I did actually quite enjoy. That was quite funny.
John Wick and Interstellar, man, that feels just strange. I really like John Wick.
Yeah, it was nice.
I don't like the other one.
Yeah. We got Winter Soldier as well, and X-Men Days of Future Past. I think Days of Future Past, just outside the top 5. I think it was in 6th place overall for the year. So, the X-Men movies could still, land a punch every once in a while.
It was a really cool movie. People liked it because it felt like it was bridging the gap and celebrating what came before, sort of thing. And it was nice to see, the classic Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart back one more time, sort of thing.
Yeah, it was nice to see. Well, Patrick Stewart would come back for Logan as well, but
and then he come back again for MOM.
Yeah, and he'd probably come back again after that as well. They'll
probably,
never stop. Yes. I did like this as well. This just came in. Master of Puppets. Did you hear there's going to be another season of All of Us Are Deads, which I was trying to get you to watch. You should watch it, Muller. See, there you go. Another guy said it. Looking forward to watching both Drinkers film and The Unbridled of Romulus. Well, there you go. The Romulus review is out now, isn't it, Muller?
It is, and I was not fond of it, if you didn't know that already. Anyway.
Yeah. But it's a Shortman review as well, so I'm shocked. But...
I used to make them that long. Remember the Black Panther and some other ones? They were about that length.
You became a victim of the long. You see, you were always trying to outlong yourself.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm working on something longer, and that's something else that I had working. You know what I mean? So just people are like, "Where's the rest of it?" Give me time.
You've become what you swore to destroy, a Shortman.
No. So scary.
Anyway, I think it's about time we brought the rest of our panel in so we can discuss stuff. What do you think, chat? And also, I did put up a poll, by the way, for Joker about whether or not you wanted spoilers for it. I think it's about 91% in favor. So, well, you have been warned anyway. Welcome to the bar, Ryan Kinel, Chris Gore, the movie Cynic, and George the Giant Slayer.
Woo!
Welcome, gentlemen. George, it's nice of you to join us after about 12 attempts to get you on here. So,
thank you for having me and for your patience.
Yeah, sometimes scheduling doesn't always work out, so I'm glad we got you on.
It's being in a coma after watching Panda Rings of Power.
It was tough.
That last episode, it's just an encapsulation of what the whole series has been. Just nonsensical editing that doesn't make any sense. People that died in the last episode are perfectly fine now.
Oh yeah,
that was funny.
I am looking forward to tearing into that. But I guess the first thing that was on my mind, and I haven't seen it yet. Actually, I'm going to see it tomorrow morning. Is Joker Filet Deux. I guess I'm curious to know your thoughts on it because I haven't heard great things, and some of you guys have seen it already. So I guess I'd kind of like to know.
If we're spoiling it, I am also going to get spoiled. I have not seen it yet. After this stream, I'm going to watch it so I can have my own thoughts. But I also have not heard great things. But
and you probably won't
reserve my judgment for what I actually see.
Right. Well. How do we begin this then?
It's the sequel no one asked for and should not have been made. Clearly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard it's like a bad opera.
Yeah.
I mean, the musical numbers, for example, like I assume it's not a complete musical. It's not like every sentence is communicated through song or anything. So it's more.
What's funny is their weird comments about how it's not a musical. Then they describe a musical with some of them. I now understand what they were trying to say after seeing the movie, because it is weird. Like, I've seen plenty of musicals. This one didn't quite feel like it reached musical. It was almost there, but a lot of songs are very short, and some of them are a little bit confusing as to exactly what the hell is even going on, where they're taking place, what have you. And then a lot of the movie is not musical. There's a lot of just normal scenes.
Yeah, and the musical aspects of it too, like some of the things are just fever dreams of Jokers, and then some of them seem like they really take place, and they'll feel very shoehorned into the movie. The original film had a ton of musical aspects to it, and I see where they were going to try and get into a musical, or at least like that was their passage, but it really doesn't pass the test.
It's also not even a good musical. I mean, a good musical, the songs advance the story, like in The Wizard of Oz, or other good musicals. Les Mis, right? They advance the story. They're just random, put in, some are ironic, and they're also sung in a weird way where they're kind of singing and talking, and
a lot of speaking, singing,
speak, sing, which is.
I found as well, a lot of the song choices were very like, something happens in the scene that we understand very clearly in terms of what's happening with characters, and then the song doesn't tell you much more at all. It'll almost be like, just to give you an example, it's not actually in there, but if you shot someone dead, and then the song was, I shot someone dead, done shot someone dead, and you're like, yeah, okay.
That would be good.
But you sort of just, once it's over, you're like, okay. I think Gary had mentioned it. It's like some of it's very impressive. The sets, the way that they choreograph it, the lighting and everything. But the story is you're like, what's going on?
I mean, is it almost like, I don't know, are the musical numbers just put in there to jazz up the movie?
Yeah, that's how I thought of it.
Because is it like, if you took them out, would it just be like quite a boring story?
I mean, there's connections to be made. Definitely, his character is definitely interested and connects himself through music to his like evolution and stuff. But we're almost circling to what I probably would prefer to talk about, which is even in the first 10 minutes of this film, I was like, wait, what? Because I recently rewatched Joker, and I was like, this is not where I would expect this to. Like, why are we? And again, because I agree with a lot with Gary's review. I'd recommend it, the one he put out. Why have we reset? We've reversed back quite significantly on where the character was and what journey he'd taken. And by the time you push, let's say, 3/4 of the way through the film, I felt like we were finally catching up to the end of the first film. And then I started to realize, and this is kind of my overall broad thoughts, I'd be curious if Cynic and Chris have a similar perspective. This film felt like it didn't like what people thought of the first one, and so retold the story and changes the ending and says, this is what I meant.
Yeah, and that's I would completely agree, because I remember Todd Phillips said in 2019 that are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, we are. The fans have spoken, and they said we can do it.
All right.
So all right, well, I'll reveal it then. He said in 2019 that Arthur Fleck most likely was not the real Joker, and indeed he is not. And so the ending that he truly wanted, he ended up just saying, he was saying it bluntly in the interview, and it was with Comic Book Resources. You can find the article, and that's exactly what he did in the end. He is not the real Joker, because he ends up getting stabbed to death by the real Joker.
Who could be the real Joker? We don't really know.
Well, it's heavily implied. And if there's anything about Todd Phillips, is that he doesn't give a crap. Like, he is explicit. So he has him carve his own Glasgow smile in there to really drive it home that this is supposed to be Joker here.
I mean, I suppose that does answer the question of, like, that everyone was pondering, like, okay, if this is set in the 80s and Joaquin Phoenix is like 50 years old, how can he possibly be the Joker when Batman's grown up, or when Bruce Wayne's grown up?
You know what, Drigger? I would have preferred that he just found a time travel machine instead of this.
I mean, well, honestly, it's probably another reason why you should never have done a sequel. Like, that story didn't need to answer that question. It's like, okay, this exists in its own little pocket universe, and it's really just the story of this guy with his illness, and it's very up in the air about how much of it is actually real and so on, which I liked the ambiguity of that ending. And yeah, from what you're describing here, it's like, well, we get those questions answered. And to pick up on the point you made earlier, like I think you said something about like, oh, it's almost like they didn't like the fact that people enjoyed his character in the first movie. Yeah, there was a headline that was doing the rounds today actually on Twitter, and it's like, Joker Part 2 has a message for the fans. Go fuck yourselves. Kudos to this follow-up to the 1 billion grossing hit for delivering something more than a carbon copy of the Angry Clown original. But who exactly is this musical sequel for? That's a good question, actually.
When you reach the end of the first film, and there's a couple of different takeaways and interpretations, which I'm totally open to. I find it really interesting to discuss. But part of, I think, when he's on the police car and he's like celebrating with the crowd, you get a sense that he's finally become comfortable with the man that he's become as a result of all of the traumas he's experienced and his perception of them altering as he gets more and more broken. And then he reaches like an equilibrium. And that is the character of the Joker. And if someone said, like, are you saying he's a good person? Are you saying he's a role model? I'd be like, of course not. I'm talking about him, how well built as a character he is, how interesting he is, and how I believe fully, almost in like, I want to see how his story goes forward in the sense of what kind of life he may live and what kind of influence he may have. But I don't need a sequel. I can get it all from the film itself, from the ending even. That one shot, I can get it. I get the story.
It's so funny that people are so black and white about these things as well. It's like, oh, your take might be, well, I found aspects of his story that were actually quite sympathetic, because he goes through a lot of trauma and he doesn't start out necessarily as an evil man, but he's pushed down this path of becoming this figure, and especially this media figure. And so people interpret that as like, oh, so you're saying it's okay to go around murdering people, right?
Yeah, that was one of the great things about the first movie was, and why for 5 years, ever since it started blowing to the box office, like for me, who I love the first one, I was like, please, 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 just because you see money signs, don't give it a sequel, because that ruins a lot of, I feel like, the discussion that was created around the first one. Is this a warning about mental illness? Is this a warning about how you treat each other, about differences in society? Like, there's so many different things you can talk about and discuss from that. Just a sequel, even if it had been really solid, even just that kind of does take away a little bit of that mystery and that ambiance and that ambiguity of everything that went down in the first one, which is why I didn't want a second one. But Warner Brothers, you got to remember, Warner Brothers didn't make a lot of money on the first one because they had different investors come in. They put up very little of the money for the first one because they didn't believe it was going to do anything. It was other people that invested that $50 million. So they didn't make nearly as much as you would expect off a $1 billion movie with a $50 million budget.
And in this case, they invested $200 million in the sequel. I was just curious to how much they spent on it. Four times as much. Why? It doesn't need to cost $200 million unless there's some crazy like city getting destroyed by a meteor or something in this movie that I don't know about. Like, what is it that costs $200 million?
I think
there's
their
an
idea
scene of that degree. So there's a big explosion at one point in the film.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, there is indeed. I think their avenue was like, even if it makes half as much, they'll still at least break even. Now I'm curious if it'll even do that.
Yeah, I don't
not liking this.
I can't predict a single thing about how much this is going to make. It's people are throwing around the word nihilistic a lot. I understand why. You are left a little sort of rudderless at the end in terms of like, oh, what? Something I was curious for those who saw it. The opening animation. Gary said he quite liked it. That's the thing that set me on worry immediately. The animation's awesome, but the story the animation tells. What did you guys think of it?
First, I actually liked it too. I thought it was clever, but unnecessary, pointless.
Well, so
really, I agree,
I don't,
Chris.
I don't agree. As weird as this sounds, I didn't agree with the animation. So the animation is he turns up to Murray's show, and then his shadow like jumps onto him, takes over, or whatever, or jumps out of him. Sorry, and goes onto the stage, does all the crazy shit. And then he comes out, like, confused and a bit worried, trying to see what's going on and work with the shadow. And then the shadow jumps onto him with the makeup and everything. And then he gets hauled away for the crimes of the shadow, right? The whole film has a lot of lines to do with this. It's basically all about it. The whole film is, who is Arthur Fleck? Is he the Joker? Is he Arthur Fleck? Is he somewhere in between? And a lot of characters try to argue he's got a split personality as a way to cope with the trauma of his younger life. And so he's not really responsible for the actions of the Joker. But, you know, again, spoilers, by the end of the film, he believes fully and completely near the end of the third act that it was him that did it. There is no Joker. And that the Joker is something that people kind of have made up and they like. And it's just not true. It's not anything. It's very kind of depressing. And that's when like Harley leaves him as a result of that.
Yeah, and then they pull a Zack Snyder and go really overboard with it, and he gets like graped in the showers by the guards.
This is a definitive to me a disagreement with what the first film said. I don't see them as compatible. It's almost as though it's like a what if. It's like, would you like to see a different version of this story? It was like, well, I didn't like that one. I prefer the first one, actually. Very interesting and strange to watch. But yeah, that opening animation, I was like, oh shit, is that going to be the point of the story? That the whole time he's suffering as a result of the actions of the shadow self, which I never even got the impression of. But I think it's supposed to set you in an assumption of that might be it. But then by the end, he's like, no, it was all me, but there's no Joker. Which I think both of those suck compared to what I thought Joker 2019 was about, which was becoming a new man, having a completely new outlook on life, and being able to consolidate all of that pain and that trauma into something that brings him the life he wanted.
I think part of the, I guess the thesis of the first movie, as I recall, was like the effects of celebrity on him, or at least people's perception of what he is. Like he becomes kind of a symbol for the downtrodden people of Gotham, regardless of what Arthur Fleck, the man, is. The Joker becomes something else to them, and he becomes like a symbol of like resistance and rebellion and stuff. And that's what they're essentially worshipping at the end when he's on that cop car. Like, do we get more of that here or what? Because like the trailers make it seem like he's a celebrity now, and like the trial that he goes through is like a big showbiz trial.
They kind of redo the arc of the first film. He starts super depressed, alone, and sort of meh. He meets Harley. She gasses him back up. And he has a thing again of getting the makeup and the suit on. He's like, yes, I'm Joker again. It starts to really rev up everyone else. He gets all of his fans and everyone into it. And then by the time he hit the third act, he realizes, you know what? I'm not. And again, because we're going full spoilers here, they blow up the courthouse. Harvey Dent gets half of his face wounded, by the way. I thought that was just like, there he goes. And then, he gets out, and this guy dressed in the full Joker makeup is like, oh my God, it's the Joker. Like, let's get out of here. And they're talking about blowing up things and giving people what they deserve. And he gets freaked out. He's like, oh God, what have I created, you know? And runs away, and then gets captured again, and then gets knifed and dies.
What a lovely story.
So are there any scenes from this film that you would say stand out, like in the first one when he's dancing kind of like down the stairs?
I would say the musical aspects, they like the cinematographer did a brilliant job with this, and they look more beautiful, but nothing is as iconic as like the things you just will remember, whether you liked the first movie or not. There are some images from that film that really will always stand out. And this one really doesn't have that, in my opinion.
I enjoyed a lot of the cinematography, but without the writing and without my investment, it felt a little thin. You know, I was like, okay, that looks really good.
Yeah,
the whole thing fell flat for me. I saw it in a 100% sold out IMAX screening, including the front rows. When the movie ended, there was silence. You could hear a pin drop. People got up and left. No applause. And this is Burbank, California. This is, they applaud for shit. But no one said a word and walked out sad. It was very. And I think there are no real standout scenes. I mean, I thought Lady Gaga was very good. Joaquin, very good. Mr. Puddles, probably the standout scene. Puddles. That was the standout. And he was in the first movie, too.
He was great. Honestly, he was really good.
Great. That scene, very funny and dark at the same time. That's the only real standout. But to me, that first movie, how do you top him in the bathroom dancing with himself, where he you see he's imbued with confidence,
and it's why they show it again,
right? They repeat the best scene from the first
show
movie
you
the sequel.
Like, it feels like the first half, if not more, is a bad repeat of the first film, like a worse repeat of the first film, just to then get us back to where we were at the end of it, and to then say, by the way, what you thought it was, wasn't it? And it's like, okay, that seems unnecessary, but all right, if you felt the need to do that.
So I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to see it tonight at 10 o'clock. But what I was wondering is, I read there are 12 musical numbers, and y'all are saying it isn't a musical. Like, so what kind of number makes a musical?
I wouldn't call them numbers. They're places in which people sing, and it's pointless because there's a singing group at the prison, at the facility, or whatever this is. It's it doesn't make sense. I want honestly, a Mr. Puddles spinoff.
You'll know exactly what we mean when you see it. Okay. I don't know that there's any other musical that I would compare it to, as like, because most musicals have full songs in them.
Right.
This one, did it have a single full song in it? Did it have even a half song in it?
Well, does it replace exposition? Is that what the music is for? Then is it more kind of like an extra voice?
I mean, I assume if you've got Lady Gaga on hand, you're going to have some numbers with her that, like, she gets to let loose.
Honestly, she's kind of got a smaller role than she. I mean, they don't show her off that much.
I thought she was kind of I thought her performance was fine, but she also was not asked to do too much because she mostly sings when she does sing as well, like most of the people in the movie.
There's a sequence where she's on the piano. I quite thought was at least a good chance for her to. Because she's like singing and using a piano and a keyboard at the same time. It's like, there you go. She's a musician. She can do that shit. That's great. But it lasts not that long. And it's like the only time in the movie, I think, where I thought, there you go. Lady Gaga gets to use her skill like somewhat. Because she's definitely like, she exists as a fan of Arthur Fleck's Joker. And she's there to reinvigorate that part of him, which I think in a better movie would work way better. But I don't know, man. Like, it sort of fizzles out. She kind of just, she's not impressed with one of his last speeches, and then he's like, "I want to be with you." Then she's like, "No."
Wow. Does she play Harley like we've seen recently? Completely different.
I find so, like, the Harley of Suicide Squad, both Suicide Squads actually.
So fucking over that Harley Quinn.
The Suicide Squad game, like, I find those ones infuriatingly frustrating to the point where whenever the scenes come up, I'm like, oh, I want to kill myself. I thought she was fine. If not, I liked her. I was fine with her. I didn't get annoyed by it at all. I would have thought she could have been better utilized. But then again, everything could have been better utilized in this film.
I heard Brendan Gleeson knocks it out of the park.
He's good, yeah.
He does,
He is good.
He's always pretty reliable, isn't he?
He's very reliable. He's exactly what you'd imagine. He's a rough, like, dick kind of warden cop person who just fulfills that role.
Yeah, it's like a Shawshank Redemption level, where the warden there had a really good relationship with Andy, but then he'd constantly do things to let you know that he was out for himself. It's kind of like their relationship here too.
Interesting.
So it sounds like a manual of what to do after you have a hit. Don't destroy it. How to destroy a movie. Wow.
I think Todd Phillips does not have a good track record when it comes to sequels. I'm serious. I just
Hangover 2.
Right. Hangover 2. I mean, look, I don't think he wanted to make this. I really think he just said, I don't want to make it. Joaquin didn't want to make it. And they backed up so much money. It's like, well, we'll just do it. And you probably heard in interviews, they talked about, well, here's what we're supposed to shoot today. And Joaquin would come in and say, let's have a 3-hour conversation about what we're actually going to shoot. So they were making up some things. There was a script, but I think Joaquin kind of wanted to be more creatively involved on that aspect, and it didn't help.
Because I remember Phillips from years ago. He was saying this is a closed world. This was a one-off. That's it. He didn't want anything else after that.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch the movie and you get that. You get that experience.
It's the end. The end. Yeah, it's like
it's done. And it's so much fun to talk about the ending. It's a really solid way to be like, Drink already mentioned all the different possible interpretations, but this film is rock solid in terms of, no, this happened. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like answers to questions that we never wanted, I suppose. Just such an odd strategy.
They even reveal some things about his past, kind of half-heartedly too, during the courtroom scenes, and I thought that was really unnecessary. It reminded me of like when the Scream movie said before Hannibal Rising came out, like, does anyone really want to know why Hannibal Lecter eats people? No, he's like way more interesting that way. And the things that you felt anyway probably had happened in his past, they have to explicitly tell you this in the movie. What
kills the mystery.
Yeah.
I mean,
is there any of that whole unreliable narrator stuff that they did like in the first film?
Yeah.
Right.
They Harley's presence is very much like they're practically explicit with it. He's put into solitary confinement and he wakes up and she's there with him, and then she says they let me in. It's like don't think so.
She's like a Tyler Durden kind of deal.
She definitely exists. They acknowledge her in the thing as like a supporter of his and that he's hanging out with her and stuff, but simultaneously you don't know how many of the scenes are real.
Right. Okay.
Which I don't think benefits the movie that much, honestly.
Not like the first one. Did you see something that they were trying to do? That like, was there a moment you're like, oh, this is, I think, what they're trying to do, but they just didn't nail it? Was there kind of like that epiphany, like, oh, this is what it was supposed to be? Or was it just all over the place? Because it sounds like it's all over the place.
I mean, unfortunately, it's both, like in a bad way. So like it is all over the place, I think, but it's also clearly like maybe I'm biased here because I really like the 2019 movie. But it really felt like the film was saying like you were wrong for what you thought about the first one, and I was just like, I disagree. And it's funny because I think a lot of people be like, you disagree with the author, the maker of the first movie, and I'm like, yeah, I've done it before. I'll do it again. I disagree with you in your interpretation of the first film. I don't think you created the film you thought you did. I really like the first one.
I think that if you get forced and you like put a gun to someone's head and say, okay, you have to make a second one because this one made so much money, so we're going to do a second one. I feel like there are things you could do. What I thought, based on a lot of the early stuff, was that we were going to get a little more of like a Harley POV in this. So maybe Arthur Fleck gets captured. He's in prison. They've got him back on drugs and he's just kind of like back in his like normal state. And she gets obsessed with him. She makes it so he doesn't get his drugs anymore. She is gaslighting him. She's imagining this world where she and the Joker can live and it'll all be like this. And like, she's kind of the impetus behind that. I feel like, I don't know what the movie was like, but to me, I feel like there's something you could do there to make it, okay, echoes of the first one, but doing something a little bit different as well.
I think what you're describing there actually sounds like a much more interesting story, because particularly when you've taken Arthur on that character journey in the first film and you've essentially had him come to his ultimate form of becoming the Joker and embracing that. It's like, okay, the next way to view him would be from the perspective of an outsider looking in rather than him looking out at the world. And that, I think, as you described, would be a really cool way to do it, of having Harley Quinn get gradually enmeshed in his madness and enthralled by him. And he's like this, charismatic, media figure, almost like a symbol. And the more she gets to know about him, like perhaps she starts to dig in a bit too deep or something. And even she's left to question, like, well, how much of it did she actually experience? How much of it was imagined or whatever? Like, I think that could work. But from what you guys have described, like, we get the opposite here. We're just getting a replay of the first movie, but not as good.
Of all the components laid out on a table of things I were worried about, the story continuing in such a way that Todd Phillips would be able to find meaning and to be able to build upon the first one wasn't much of a concern of mine. Like, I thought that would be okay. I thought that we would at least pass like a, you know what I mean? Like,
but it should have been.
And then I watch it and I'm like, the musical stuff's, like it could have worked if the story were backing it, and Lady Gaga could have been a really good part of it if you'd given her a better role in the whole story. And obviously, Joaquin Phoenix's performance, it's as good as it is in the first one in the sense that he's fulfilling all of what is in the script. But again, the story itself is the biggest issue for me, and I'm very disappointed, unfortunately. And truthfully, I don't know about the other lads here, but I would not recommend it, especially if you like the first one.
Oh, I love the first one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you like the first one, this is no go. It's just
so disappointing.
I mean, the first half of the movie really did just feel like it was rehashing the first one and reframing things. So if that interests you with a little musical number dabbled onto it, go for it. But I can't imagine a lot of people are going to.
It's kind of like, don't watch the Star Wars sequels because they're going to ruin your memories.
Yeah. If I could unsee them, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I have tickets for tonight, a little after the show, and there's hardly anybody in the theater that I'm booked for. So I did like the first one. I'm seeing this one anyway.
And this is Thursday, like Thursday previews or whatever. Like, imagine what it's going to be like when it gets to the weekend. Like, because the word of mouth seems to be quite bad already, and it seems to be spreading quite rapidly. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this has quite a rough opening weekend.
Yeah, who are they going to blame this time for its failure?
Yeah, it's got to be the incels, obviously.
Yeah, it's got to be.
You know what's funny about this whole thing, though? Like, I think we all had misgivings about this movie right from the start. Like, when they announced the sequel, like, the first reaction is probably like, why the fuck are they making a sequel to Joker? Like, it didn't need it. And then it's like, oh, it's a musical, and it's got Lady Gaga in it. Okay, that's weird. I don't really like where this is going. But you try to tell yourself, like, well, you know, Todd Phillips knows what he's doing. He created a great movie with the first one, and we saw the trailer. It looked kind of interesting. You try to convince yourself it's going to be good, but secretly you kind of suspect it might be shit. And then here we are. It's you know, I guess it's been exactly what we suspected it would be from what you're describing, an unnecessary sequel that's actually way worse than the original.
It almost sounds like what Gladiator 2 is going to be like.
What's oh god, yeah. What's interesting is you know, a few people have said like it damages the first one to the point of, you know, you can't even watch that without it being taken. It's like, for me, this isn't canon. I'm not like it's too, it disagrees with the first one so hard that I'm like, I'm taking the first one, not you. You're gonna sit in the, that was an interesting decision place. You're like Prometheus. It's like, that's an interesting decision. You can stay over there on the shelf.
It's, God, when I think about this now, right, the Batman cinematic universe is in such a weird place. Yeah. Like, it's so fragmented. You know, you've got the movie, which was reasonably successful. Penguin's come out, yeah, which is this like odd spin-off that's actually turning out to be quite good, but it's like really got no connection to the movie so far. And then you've got like the Joker, which was like this bizarre standalone thing that wasn't really meant to be connected to anything, and now it's got a sequel. Like, it's just kind of all over the place, and I don't really, it doesn't feel like there's any kind of overarching plan to any of it. It's just like a bunch of stuff. You know, something was successful, okay, let's try and capitalize on that. Oh, this didn't work, okay, cancel that, let's try something different. I imagine we're not going to, yeah, like, obviously this story's ended from what you've described of the ending. Yeah, we're not going to get more Arthur Fleck, so
thank God it's not going to make any money. They'd make another one. Could you imagine that? And I haven't seen it yet, but to me, after watching The Penguin, I was like, before the movie came out, I had hopes. I was a little hope for this, but because I love The Penguin.
Yeah, I mean,
I would also just say, like, generally speaking, and again, curious for Cynic and Chris on this one. I don't think audiences are going to enjoy this, and I don't think they're going to want to watch it more than once either.
No, because I was at a sold-out IMAX too, just like Chris, and whenever I'm doing those previews, like, everyone's just so excited. Usually, like, they clap. Everyone's just kind of like, "Did you like?" They needed a check. Like, "Did you like it?" Like, I was just hearing more like whispers. No one really gave a crap and just kind of hit the road.
Yes, and we
As
all got
all the like cheer. People were having a great time at the end of the first Joker movie. You know, they were laughing and having a good time, at least in my theater, and jumping on cars. They felt very inspired by the movie.
Setting things on fire. Yeah.
That first Joker I saw 3 times in the theater, and it was great. Audiences loved it. They applauded at the end, even small audiences. It had profound things to say. And this one is just sad and unnecessary. And at this point, as you pointed out, Drinker, with all the different, disparate, disconnected Batman things, you could do a Batman cinematic universe practically, but they also just announced a Robin cartoon, Caped Crusader.
Dynamic duo, right?
Dynamic duo, that's it.
They're doing a Dick Grayson and Jason Todd Robin animated movie. James Gunn just announced it yesterday.
Yes.
Wow.
Who gives a shit? I don't care. And then Gunn is doing The Brave and the Bold with an older Batman and a Damian Wayne. Is that right? Like, that's what he announced. I mean,
yeah, Brave and the Bold was one of those initial announcements. So I still don't think we have any confirmation who's playing Batman yet. But this is all as you have a very successful HBO Max R-rated gang war series that's leading into the Batman 2, which has nothing to do with the current DC universe reboot.
It's insane. It's
like a mess.
Yeah.
And the quality of Penguin, though, proves that if that team did a proper Batman crime show, it would be amazing. Recast Pattinson, just get a new Batman and have him solving crimes. You've got season-long arcs. They haven't done a proper Batman TV show since 1966 with Adam West. Just do that and think of the villains you could bring in. The arcs, it would run 10 seasons. It would be huge. And then do a movie Batman. That's fine. Have movie Batman, do big, world ending things. I don't know.
I would be totally down for Batman the series, where every season is focused on an overall arc for like a major villain, and obviously you've got little ones that are popping up all the time and stuff like that. But
yeah, the thing is, if you can afford Colin Farrell for like the TV show for an entire season, you could probably get Pattinson in for a limited, like a mini series or something. I don't know, like he's not that big of a star that like he's gonna cost mega bucks or anything.
Well, I like the trailer for that movie. What was it, Mickey 17 or Mickey 18?
Yeah, that interests me.
Kind of clever, fun. But
I think for Pattinson, I think it's more as like, does he want to do something as opposed to is the money right? Because he does a lot of shit that he probably doesn't make a lot of money on.
True.
Yeah.
True. A lot of indie stuff.
I did like this one as well from Keaton. A local theater had Chinatown playing. I took the girlfriend to that over Joker 2. She was absolutely enthralled by the story. It seems like it was the right call.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But from what these guys have described, watch Chinatown over Joker 2 anytime.
I would have to say, watching The Penguin, just one more thing. Gotham, to me, it's the first time I've seen a city actually be like a character. Like I feel it breathing when he goes through different parts of the town. Like you can see it unrolling. Just a beautiful thing.
It's really jarring to see the Batman and then watch the Penguin, because the difference between PG-13 and R-rated with the language is really it's really jarring.
They get to drop F-bombs all the time and it's glorious. And the Penguin really opens it out, because I get the feeling like you've got the equivalent of like Brooklyn and stuff in it, which maybe you didn't get within the Batman movie. It's all centered on Gotham itself, like New York or Manhattan Island, I guess, is the equivalent. But it broadens it out here, but it still feels consistent with that world. It's still, everything's quite run down and grimy, and it's like a dilapidated city. So I like the aesthetic of it. They never go full Gotham like I guess you would get in like the Tim Burton movies or something, where it's properly stylized, but I don't suppose you can keep the realistic look and have that in it.
I was talking about that a little the other day. Like if we saw a Gotham like we saw in those first couple and those Tim Burton ones, like how would we react to that now, like today? Almost, I guess, in the same way like Beetlejuice 2 is similar. Like you do have similar aspects to that, which trying to replicate things you did in the first one that don't necessarily come across great in modern filmmaking, where we watch something from the 80s and we're totally down from it. We're down for it. It feels right in that style. If you presented it as a modern day movie or show, would we feel the same way? And I don't really know what the answer is to that.
I'm always torn about this idea of like, do we want to go for the grounded, realistic sort of Christopher Nolan style at one end, or do we want to go for the hyper stylized, Tim Burton-esque, like as you described, like the cities like essentially taken from the comic books and put onto a film screen style. And as you said, there isn't really an easy answer to this. It's going to come down to some extent to the implementation and how seriously the director takes it. Because when you look at the original comics, it's like, okay, it's written in the 30s and 40s and it's meant to represent like this new vision of the future. Like I think it's meant to be set in like the 2000s or something, like their idea of what like an advanced city was going to look like, but it is all run down and everything, hence the crazy architecture. So I don't know if there is any ideal solution to it, but man, I love that look, that look of the Gotham, with all the girders, and it's like a Gothic cathedral, but made out of iron and an industrial kind of look to it. It's such a cool aesthetic, but it's not easy to do in film.
Well,
so has anyone met?
Oh, there we are.
Did anyone meet anyone who liked Joker?
So that's the really interesting thing that I found.
Zero.
when a film comes out and a bunch of different people have a bunch of different perspectives, I'm like, oh, this will be curious. If everyone likes it, I'm still entertaining the idea. It's like, it could be bad. It could be a crowd pleaser. Who could? But when I see everybody hate it, I was like, oh, shit. We're fucked. It's bad.
Yeah.
I met one of my friends is kind of an apologist of it, and I think it's because I dropped like an out of the theater reaction, and he seemed to kind of be reacting to my reaction. He's like, actually, it did have new things to say, and his explanation was basically like it had new things to say about the exact same stuff it was talking about in the first movie. I was like, so it's a rehash, you mean? He's like, well, yeah, like I wouldn't necessarily recommend the movie. So that's the closest I've gotten to someone that said they liked it.
Tell you what, like I want to ask you guys a question because I feel like we kind of delivered our verdict on Joker a little bit.
He's segueing. Stop him.
I'm trying. The question is, right, and this is asked by the Hollywood Reporter of all people, is Disney bad at Star Wars?
No.
It's nice to see them catching up on current events here.
Well, the funny thing to me was like I saw so many tweets like that. Glad to see you're finally here a decade later, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You actually read the article, their analysis is that no, Disney's not bad at Star Wars.
This is what I wanted to delve into a little bit, and it's like I described this to Mo earlier. It's like they've to go through a doorway, right, and someone has pushed them right up to the threshold, and they just need to take one more tiny little step, and they just refuse to do it.
Yeah, they're like, let me tie my shoelaces. And you're like, no, go through the door.
Yeah, they're kind of looking for every possible explanation apart from, this franchise has been mismanaged. But I'll try and give you the highlights because it is quite a lengthy article. But I figured there's some absolute gold here in terms of the claims that they make. But it does here say, right. So they talk about the exchange between Finn and Rey when they're trying to find a spaceship that's going to get them off the planet in Force Awakens, and they look for the Millennium Falcon, and Rey declares, "Look, the garbage will do." And increasingly, that's the attitude that fans have about Disney Star Wars programming. Look, we all know it's not fantastic anymore, but Star Wars is still Star Wars, and therefore it'll do. And to be fair, the shows and movies remain far from space junk.
The critics love these things. That means it's not garbage. We promise.
Yeah, their titles typically get glowing reviews from critics and generate box office returns. Not so much these days. And streaming ratings that other studios would envy, though at a high cost. So they tried to sum up some of the things that they've done here. They've had a 5-movie franchise that was halted after its box office returns trended in the wrong direction. No shit. I mean,
how's that a success then?
One of their thesis statements in the beginning is they had great box office success. And then like the next line, they're like, well, they stopped it because they weren't getting good returns.
They have 6 live-action TV shows, just one of which has been a multi-season hit, and a startling number of projects put into development and then abandoned, and one wildly ambitious role-play hotel that closed after less than a year.
Sounds successful to me.
Great, yeah. So they talk about the movies. Essentially, like they sugarcoat it as much as they can. Force Awakens made crazy numbers. Last Jedi, not so much. Rise of Skywalker, even less.
They do some interesting stuff in there where they talk about Force Awakens. They talk about Last Jedi, the reaction some people had to it, and then Rise of Skywalker, the reaction some people had to it, and how the visions very much were different between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams. And after Last Jedi, J.J. Abrams comes in and says, hey, all that stuff, that's not actually happening. Rey's not a nobody. She's a Palpatine. So they talk about that little back and forth. And one of the things they talk about as well is the multitude of project starts that then get canceled, directors being replaced, kind of the chaos behind the scenes type of thing as well.
Yeah, because I tried to sum up this in a recent video I made, theorizing that maybe the Rey movie is actually going to get quietly cancelled. But even I couldn't list the full number of cancelled projects, but they have it here. This is pretty exhaustive as far as I know. Rian Johnson, Benioff and Weiss, Patty Jenkins, Colin Trevorrow, David Lindelof, David S. Goyer, Josh Trank, Guillermo del Toro, Taika Waititi, and Kevin Feige were all supposed to be doing either movies or entire trilogies for Lucasfilm. All of them have been cancelled.
I like how they just throw the Taika Waititi one in there, even though there's no like official like abandonment or whatever. That is
everyone knows that movie is
We
fucking
know.
dead.
We all know.
Yeah. If a movie gets announced in 2020 and it's still, we haven't heard any news about it by 2024, 4 years down the line, yeah, that movie ain't going anywhere.
It did take Acolyte. Acolyte got announced in the immediate aftermath of Rise of Skywalker, like January or February of 2020. And that didn't get to screen until 4 years later, basically.
But we
did hear about it at least.
Yeah, we got news. And this is one of the reasons I thought maybe the Rey movie's in trouble, because that was like 18 months ago that it was first announced, and there hasn't been a single piece of news about it since then.
Yeah, well, the World of Real says that it's been canceled or scrapped. That's what his contacts were saying.
They're very speculative. They also said that what's his fucking name? Gus Fring, Giancarlo Esposito. They also wrote a headline that says Mandalorian and Grogu are getting a trilogy because Giancarlo Esposito was guessing as to what they wanted to do with movies. So headlines, you got to be careful where you get them. I think sure. Like, it's not a surprise that this thing is delayed. The idea that you have a documentarian filmmaker, an activist person who makes documentaries coming in to do a big Star Wars project is a joke, like, first and foremost. But it certainly didn't help things when it gets announced, the writer's strike happens, obviously delays the writing for that. That guy also had priority on the Peaky Blinders movie, which I think is currently in the middle of production.
Yeah, Stephen Knight's.
Yeah, Stephen Knight. There's a better than 50% chance it does get canceled. But if I'm betting, I think that is one of the few that sees the light of day, because they dragged Daisy Ridley's ass to Celebration, brought her up on stage, talked about the return of her character. Do you think Sharmina Obaid-Chinoy, that woke bitch, what do you think she's going to do if this gets canceled? You're telling me that person's not going to make a fuss after everything they did, the way they virtue signaled? I think it was just one of those projects where they will see it to the end, no matter what, kind of like Acolyte.
But I don't imagine it's going to get like a big announcement like the Acolyte, like, we're not moving forward with this. I think it would just go the way of Taika Waititi's or Rian Johnson's movie trilogies, where they would just stop talking about it and then quietly just forget that it was ever a thing. Yeah, if that's how they were going to do it, I don't think they would make an announcement.
Well, remember, they didn't make an announcement for the Acolyte. That was a leak. Disney was planning on never addressing that again. I just think that's going to be difficult, because you're not just talking about a director like a Rian Johnson, whatever, who might get asked every once in a while. You're talking about like the lead actress who they announced was part of it. And Daisy Ridley in every one of these interviews talks about it. So
she must do. It's like the only thing she's got going on in her career.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what else they're going to talk about
swimming. She did a swimming movie or something. I saw
Swim in the Channel.
Look, I'll tell you, part of the reason I don't think the Daisy Ridley thing is ever going to happen. Well, two things. One, the way it was announced when it was it New Year's Day or Eve, Ryan, when she went on CNN to somehow...
It was on New Year's Eve. But that wasn't how it was announced. It was announced at Disney Star Wars Celebration about a month.
I saw that, but I'm saying the director doing this, she went rogue, did her own little press tour to save the project. And let me tell you, I have a screener right now for a Daisy Ridley movie coming to theaters in a couple of weeks called Magpie. Have you heard of it? No. None of you have. I'm positive, like The Young Woman and the Sea, it's not very good. Daisy Ridley is not a box office draw. She's got the same career trajectory as Mark Hamill in the 70s. Mark Hamill could only play that one character. No one cared any other movie, even with all due respect to Corvette Summer. Some of you might have seen. I was fine. But I'm saying Daisy Ridley has been in movies. Every one of those films has bombed. She is she's starring in that woman, the Young Woman in the Sea movie, which I went to a theater to see, which is not a great movie. I assume Magpie will also be equally lame, but Harrison Ford went on to have he had a career outside of his the two main characters that he played, right? Daisy Ridley does not have a career, and I actually think she's a fine actress. She's fun.
I think she's adequate. I think she's in this unfortunate position of an actress where one, she's lumbered with typecasting after Star Wars, and two,
Right.
she's not gorgeous enough to like get like any of the sort of sex symbol roles or just like, you know, lead on her looks. And she's not good enough really as an actress in terms of like her charisma and her screen presence and her range to command the screen and just nail like really complex challenging roles either. So I guess what I'm saying is she's just a bit mid, and that's not really going to cut it when you're trying to make it in Hollywood like this.
Yeah, I agree. I thought she was wooden. I always think she's wooden. But could you imagine the press junkets if they actually put the movie out with Chinoy? You know, everybody's going to be running that thing. I want to piss men off. It's going to run 24/7. Whoa!
I don't think it'll ever happen. And by the way, Daisy's she's lacking in Sweeney's. I would just say that's the way I'd put it. But it is weird too with celebrities. So many celebrities do endorsements. They're like influencers now. You see, if you've seen the list of the things, Sydney Sweeney is successful, not just as an actress. She is a producer who develops projects for herself, but she's also doing a lot of endorsements. Same with Ryan Reynolds. We're seeing celebrities cannot make a living just doing movies or TV. They have to have other extracurricular things to supplement their income. That is a reality now.
Well, I know, Chris, like, you can't expect people to get by on 20 million a year. God, it's ridiculous.
I mean,
well, I will say this, because we've seen actors and celebrities do endorsements and commercials and stuff like that for literally since the beginning of time, right? It's different now, obviously, in the age of social media and stuff like that. Ryan Reynolds has probably made more money off the businesses that he has created, maybe than his fucking movie shit. Like whether it's the Mint Mobile thing, whether it's his is it Aviation Gin? Is that his?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like he's actually like made brands and made a fuck ton of money off of them. That Mint Mobile deal, because he sold them off to somebody. Like supposedly he made hundreds of millions of dollars from that deal. They're like leveraging their influence to build companies and then sell them off.
All I remember
what were you saying to me one time, Mo, that like he's essentially owns like a big advertising company that's just like on standby to pick up on whatever thing is hot, like for the next trend. And
I saw a video break this down where he's like ready to go on taking advantage of all kinds of viral trends. Like he's got a company built for it or something. It's which apparently is primarily where his money came from, at least according to the video.
Well, I didn't want to sidetrack, but all I'm pointing out is that Daisy Ridley isn't a draw. No. Like her character, she's the granddaughter of the main villain of the 9 Star Wars movies. I don't care what happens to her. I would have cared if there was the daughter or son of Han Solo and continuing their adventures, or the daughter or son of Luke Skywalker interests me. The granddaughter of the main evil villain who I don't know, didn't redeem him, but somehow has her own arc that sucked. No one thought this through, clearly. But she's not a draw. You know who's a bigger draw? Grogu. Grogu is a bigger brand, a bigger draw for a movie than Rey. Let's be honest.
Well, hence the reason, like, they brought him back after, like, he was supposedly gone from the show after season 2. They're like, no, this is the one thing that we can fucking sell.
Yeah, they're bringing
him front and center of everything.
For the record, if it turned out in the fucking next movie Rey is not a Palpatine, she's actually Luke Skywalker's fucking distant daughter, I would still not give a single shit. I wouldn't care about her at all. I'd still be like, yep, that's cringe.
They could still do that. They could still do that. They could make the reveal that no, actually,
they all lied to you.
Went and retrieved Luke's hand, and they used that to clone, and it was just a big lie. Everybody got gaslit. She's actually the daughter of Luke.
That's so dumb. It will happen. It will happen. Write it. Just write it. Fanfic. I mean, Star Wars is such a hobbled brand at this point. To take a brand that was like bulletproof. I mean, it's printing money to make Star Wars sequels, or one would think, until the bad idea, like, let's not even bother to reunite the 3 main characters who were the stars of, the original trilogy. It's ridiculous. Can you imagine,
Chris? Don't you know Dave Filoni is going to make it happen? He's going to make everyone's dreams come true when he does his movie. And for 5 minutes, we're going to have a random reuniting between maybe 3 CGI deformed creatures. Maybe they recast them so that they can help assist Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and Ahsoka and Sabine and Ezra, so they can all unite to defeat Grand Admiral Thrawn.
It'll be so bad.
It's funny as well because this article actually talks about like the real positives that they've produced over the years. So this is a short list. According to them, we've got Rebels, something from 10 years ago that's irrelevant now. The Bad Batch, I'm willing to bet no one in their right mind ever gave a shit about that show. Visions, no one's cared, no one watched it. Tales of the Jedi, again, see my previous comment. And we've got Skeleton Crew coming up, which again, I am willing to bet no one is going to give a shit about.
And it's, I would argue with the quality of some of those, but taking it at face value, those animated entries is great. If people like them, that's good, but they don't move the needle at all. Nobody fucking watches them in the grand scheme of general Star Wars audience. They just don't. That's why the Clone Wars fan bases thought that they're a lot bigger than they actually are for years and years and years. It just does not have that same appeal. So, and I don't think Tales of the Jedi is good. I actually think it's fucking retarded, but a handful of people watched it. Samba TV numbers. I remember there were Samba TV numbers. They put it out for one episode, like the season 2 premiere of The Bad Batch or something. And you know how we always get this, oh, Penguin, 3.2 million households. Oh, Ahsoka, almost 1 million households. For Bad Batch season 2, it was something like 78,000 households.
Wow.
Right? So we're talking about completely different levels when you're talking about something moving the needle for Star Wars. And those animated shows, even if it does have a dedicated fan base, that does not do it.
Can it be fixed? That's the point. Can it be fixed, or does it need like a 10-year break and somebody else at the helm?
I don't know how
maybe not even a break. Just fucking end it. I don't even think it needs to ever come back. Just fucking end it.
I think, because you talked about a damaged brand, or Chris, you called it a hobbled brand. I think at a certain point it becomes almost like a toxic brand to the point where people are actively rooting for it to fail now, and that's a tough one to come back from when you have turned so many people against it that they're actually just laughing at it now and they're just waiting for each new project to fail. You should just stop. Well, and to go back to what George said, I'd probably give it a break. Don't release any new content for about 5 or 10 years and then get some new creatives in. Start again.
I logged more watch minutes of Acolyte videos on YouTube than I did of Acolyte. Like, it was fun. It was fun to watch all of you talk about it. So
I see someone in chat saying, like, fuck off, Ryan. Tales of the Jedi is great. Yeah, I'm sure you like fucking your little Ahsoka girl boss moments. I'm sure you love how they retconned Yaddle and retconned the entire way that Kamino got erased from the Jedi archives, by the way. So you could have Yaddle find out that Dooku is a Sith and discover him and Palpatine together. So her and Dooku can have a big girl boss battle where she does this incredible sacrifice. Go fuck yourself if you think Tales of the Jedi is you're a fucking idiot.
But we don't hold back, Ryan. Tell us how you really feel about this.
It's funny because I didn't even know that Yaddle fought Count Dooku.
Yeah, I never heard of it.
Voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard. Yaddle. Fucking retconning her entire fucking story arc that they did before. Also, she can have a big girl boss showdown with Dooku while Palpatine watches on because she discovers them together. Go fuck yourself, Dave Filoni, you piece of shit.
I have fucked myself. This is the gayest episode of Open Bar I've ever been on. I heard you were talking musicals earlier. Forget that.
Talking about
Star Wars brand needs this Deadpool and Wolverine situation. Like that's what they're counting on Mandalorian and Grogu being like this stopgap, this mild revitalization for a moment.
I actually despise both of those characters now, and I can't even call them characters because one has zero personality and doesn't even have a face, and the other one is just a fucking animatronic puppet.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the other one's Pedro Pascal.
The problem is the name of the movie. That just tells me how it's going to suck. No one could think of something better. Mandalorian and Grogu. Could you imagine if they were writing
problem is your
Jaws?
two main characters.
Shark in the boat.
The problem is, just like Drinker said, the two main characters are somebody who rarely speaks and has no real like personality, like by design in a sense, and the other one can't speak, and it's a baby. And as soon as you let him speak, it loses all of its fucking value. So they're fucked. They are fucked with these two characters. That's why
it's like a poison chalice. Yeah, this Grogu is like a poison chalice for them, because on the one hand, he sells merchandise, he's cute, and like people do like him. But on the other hand, there's nothing you can do with him. You can't advance his character. You can't give him a personality, because as Ryan said, the moment he's able to speak, he's going to sound creepy and weird, and like he won't be like this cute little baby thing anymore. And so you're stuck in this perpetual he's just doing cutesy dumb things, and that's all you've got to work with. It's nothing, and it's not enough to base a movie on. And I think they think that this is going to be a much bigger deal than it actually is. Like, the TV show fell off a cliff in season 3, and I just think people are kind of over these characters now. I certainly am.
Well, what were the numbers for the TV show? That was the last.
They never tell you. Like, they give you minutes watched or something, and it's so fucking like it could be anything. It's like
the first, like the initial premiere, right? It was also like the launch thing for Disney Plus. So. And that was
the last season. Because I'm curious, because that will kind of reflect what the movie might do.
The last season was a massive drop off from the first 2 seasons, both in terms of the way people received it and the people that viewed it. I think that premiere only had like something like 700 or 800 million minutes watched, as opposed to season 2 premiere. But I do think that from a financial perspective, it is probably better for them to, because this is not like a new project. They took Mando season 4, they mashed it up, and they're going to make it into a movie. That's what they've done.
And spend the same amount of money they spent on the season.
Maybe a little more, but if you're going to spend $80 or $100 million on Mando season 4, it's probably better financially for them to spend 80, 100, 120, 130, whatever it ends up being, as long as it is in that realm, as opposed to going up to $300 fucking million, and just put it out in theaters. And you know what? If it makes 500 million, they're actually making fucking money on Star Wars, which would be the first time in a while. And if not, they're probably losing less money than they would be by just putting it on Disney Plus.
What would be your box office prediction for a Rey movie?
It'd be Marvel's level. I mean, it would be like bad. Like, it wouldn't break 200. I mean, it's really based on the popularity of her, and she's not popular. Her character isn't popular. If you listed, you can figure it out from licensing. What are the most popular characters? Maybe Ryan knows this. And even Luke Skywalker's not sort of maybe in the top 10. It's Darth Vader. Darth Vader is #1 for Star Wars, among other characters, right? But Rey is not even close. So the legacy characters far outshine the sequel characters.
I think that's what they're afraid of as well, because like with with these streaming shows, you can make up any metrics you want to try and justify it and make it sound like a success. When it comes out in movie theaters, there's no hiding it. You can't hide from the numbers. And I think at least up until this point, they can say, well, Rey is a popular character because every one of her movies made over $1 billion. How many people can say that? And like the moment this comes out and it like fails to break, 200-300 million, you've got nothing then. It's like the definitive answer to that question. Is Rey actually been well received by the Star Wars fan base?
Nope.
No. And maybe that's the reason they're trying to quietly back out of this, and they're thinking, announcing this movie wasn't such a good idea. Maybe we should just quietly cancel it. Or give her a series on Disney Plus.
Well, you heard that next year it's supposed to be, there's been 3 reports that Disney is going to create a 24-hour-a-day Marvel channel and a 24-hour-a-day Star Wars channel. It just runs in loop. all the shows.
Is that designed for like Guantanamo Bay? So
I don't know what it is
prisoners
for.
to it.
But
Like,
it's called, it said 24 hours a day. It says right here. It's like Disney announced that 4 new channels are coming to Disney Plus, officially called Streams. The new streaming stations run 24/7. It's going to be Star Wars, Marvel, and something Hits and Heroes.
It's literally just I don't really know why people are making such a big deal about those. Those are literally just for fucking parents or whatever to put shit on so they don't have to come and click next movie, and just let their kids veg out in front of whatever. I think that I think they might be on. Some of those might be already on Disney Plus by now.
Okay.
Where it's just a loop. You turn it on, it's a fucking loop.
So yeah,
a couple of super chats that came in here while we were just chatting. Mexican Iron Man says, "What a great discussion and panel, Drinker and Mauler. Special shout out to my longtime brothers George Slayer Nation, Chris from Film Threat, and Ryan RK Nation." Thank you, Mexican Iron Man. Yeah. And X McAllister says, "Can y'all invite Matthew Marsden on for an open bar? I know Marsden's been a long time watcher and started his YouTube channel a while back, and his deep knowledge would be a big boon to the bar." Yeah, I've had him on actually for an interview talking about his career, and he's a good guy. Yeah, really interesting career he's had, and good guy to talk to. So you'd have him on open bar for sure. The other article that you guys were sending to me while we were like getting ready for this open bar was from Variety this time. It says toxic fandom. That's always a good start. How Hollywood is battling fans who are just out for blood, from social media boot camps to superfan focus groups. It's amazing. So again, it's a lengthy one, so I'll try and just give you the highlights here. But they start by talking about Amanda Stenberg, because of course they do. She posted an 8.5-minute video to her Instagram stories about Lucasfilm's abrupt decision not to pick up the show for season 2. And that was truly gripping to watch, like watching her play with her hair for about 8 minutes straight and struggle to come up with an actual coherent sentence. But she did have to say, "It's not a huge shock to me. We started experiencing a rampage of hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol." So all the usual stuff. So essentially, The Acolyte was the latest high-profile target of the toxic fandom, the catch-all term for when fan criticism curdles from good faith dissatisfaction to a relentlessly negative, bigoted online campaign against the project or its stars or creative leaders. So if you criticize it too much, then that's it. You're toxic.
Did you see paragraph 3 where they talk about the franchise economy?
Yeah, well, there it is there. Increasingly dependent upon established audience devotion to drive the bottom line, the threat of toxic fandoms poisoning that enthusiasm is becoming a seemingly intractable headache for almost every studio, and it's only getting worse. And it's interesting, actually, because they talk about how they're aware of it and they are afraid of provoking the fans by responding to it. And so they just have to kind of keep their heads down and hope that it'll pass them by. Which is an interesting observation, I suppose, because I think in the past they might have said, no, we need to confront this head on and show them who's boss.
But I thought it was a little bit weird, though, didn't you, Drinker, where it's like they're talking about the franchise economy. To me, that's like, well, we don't have any creativity or talent to create something new, so it's just all IP. That's kind of a little bit what I was
mean, it's very true, though, isn't it? Like, they rely so much upon legacy franchises, legacy characters, just remake old stuff. How many new things have they created? Even that previous article, actually, that was about the Disney mismanagement Star Wars, they pointed to the Acolyte as being one of the only new things that they created that wasn't based on like previous characters and so on. And look how that turned out.
And as if a franchise economy itself isn't just a negative thing in general anyway, because like you're talking about, like we should feel bad for movie studios for creating franchises and then milking them to death, as if like everyone should be eating up all the slop all the time.
Well, they talk about it here, actually. There's a quote from a studio executive, says it comes with the territory, but it's gotten incredibly loud in recent years, says a veteran marketing executive. People are just out for blood regardless. They think the purity of the first version will never be replaced, or you've done something to upset the canon of a beloved franchise, and they're going to take you down for doing so. And again, it's like, well, it's like he's saying, like, oh, you know, why do you have to keep like pushing back when we mess with all this stuff and like rewrite history? Like, why can't you just accept the slop that you're given, peasants? But like, of course they're going to push back.
It sounded like they said, like, oh, it's just angry. They'll do it for any reason, like a crazy reason, like you shit all over the thing they like. It's insane. Any reason, you know, throw it out. It's like, well, yeah. It's kind of been a problem for a while as well.
Yeah. They say here they mention YouTube, obviously. An entire YouTube ecosystem is devoted to declaring projects like The Marvels and The Boys woke garbage, among other pungent statements. Not that many people have been talking about The Boys being woke. I don't see many videos about that necessarily.
I'm also confused. There's an entire industry devoted to calling things good or bad or excellent or terrible or the next piece of whatever media that's going to progress whatever thing. It's this oftentimes audiences for everything. I just don't see why that's an interesting factoid, other than the idea that it's like people do it just because other people will watch it. But then
these are sorry, Molly. Go ahead.
Just to say that, like, there's they even seem to recognize in what you've read several reasons why people have these perspectives, but then simultaneously are like, it's just nonsense and they're doing it for money.
I think their biggest problem is that it's gaining traction. And so, now when people make statements like that, a lot of people end up agreeing with it because they know it's actually true. Like if you say the Marvels is garbage, you don't need to be like clairvoyant to understand that. It's like, yeah, it is shit. And I agree it's shit and it shouldn't be because you guys are capable of creating better things than this. You just haven't. And so that creates the snowball effect of, that actually translates to an impact on your bottom line. Some people then don't go to see these movies or TV shows or whatever, and it starts to hurt you. And you're pissed off about it now because people can actually make their thoughts known. It's such an interesting reaction to it because it's almost like they're mad that people get to voice their opinions about stuff now.
Yeah, the article also kind of contradicts itself because it talks about how generally it's whatever normies, the general audience that makes up the bulk of an audience of a franchise film, so therefore YouTubers wouldn't have a major impact. But then again, it also has a major impact. Like, which one is it? I can't really decipher which one from that article.
They have to be stuck in this awkward position of, because they don't want to give too much credence to the people who are like super critical of what they do. So they always have to paint them as a tiny minority of people who just shout really loud. But they also have to recognize in the case of this article that they're actually having a major impact because a lot of people end up agreeing with them. And so, well, what is it? Are they this big threat that's damaging your bottom line and then it's unfair? Or are they a tiny subset of people who don't have any power whatsoever? You can't have it both ways.
That's the conundrum. And like what they're arguing is that we have so much power that we're able to influence people's excitement about a show. A lot of these shows depend on fan excitement in the lead up. And when you have these people that are talking about it in a bad way, then that doesn't happen. As if we are the people that crown things a success one way or the other.
Well, right. We single-handedly killed Acolyte. It was just us.
Yeah, certainly, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I wish that was true because I would take credit for that. You're welcome, world.
Do you remember this space when Barbie happened and the amount of people that were complaining about it and were trying to tear it down and like all this shit? And I looked at the Barbie movie a little bit different way. I said, yeah, it feels like they're making a movie for girls who played with Barbies 20 years ago. Like that's the target demographic. That's the target audience. Doesn't really appeal to me, but I wouldn't expect it to, in the same way that like male dominated franchise shouldn't be made to appeal to people that aren't actually the target audience for it. If the YouTubers had so much sway over things, why did Barbie make, $1.5 billion, whatever the fuck it made? And the truth is, because if what we happen to be saying aligns with what the vast majority of other people think at that moment, it's going to seem like, well, a lot of people agree with these guys. Yeah, that's how it fucking works. If we were talking about, I don't know, what's something that's been incredibly like universally loved lately?
Like Deadpool and Wolverine was pretty well loved.
Yeah, no, Mahler loved that. So for instance, Mahler, why couldn't you work your magic and turn everyone against Deadpool and Wolverine?
Can you imagine?
Give him time.
Campaigns against these projects. Why didn't it work for Deadpool and Wolverine?
12-hour video coming.
Right, but the fact is they want to blame YouTubers and toxic fans, whatever the one the fuck that is. Except they're not servicing the fans. Tolkien has about a 400 to 500 million fan base. did Amazon go, hey, let's make something for all the Tolkien fans around the world? Because that would huge market.
I think as well, like this argument of the toxic fan base, it's so dated now and played out. It's like they've tried so many times to make this stick and it never really has, because people just rebuff it immediately and just go, nah, it's full of shit. Like, where people are just criticizing things that deserve to be criticized. And that's it. And like, you can't guilt people into liking things, I'm afraid, and you can't guilt them into staying quiet when they know something sucks. Especially with the nature of the internet. Like, it's anonymous. People can voice their opinions about these things and not have to fear about getting fired or anything. So that's the problem.
Well,
like, and it's something they can't overcome.
It's like CNN is now going to start charging, what is it, $3.99 or $2.99 a month? I mean, it's news.
Good luck with that.
Right, but they can't give it away for free. But they're like, hey, we're starting a subscription service.
Well, look, I just want to say something about criticism, because I've been around this space since before there was an internet, and people made money writing about film in newspapers and magazines. Magazines are like the internet, printed on really thin slices of wood, for those that don't know what a magazine is. But just, there's always been this industry, okay? There's always been. I mean, Roger Ebert, if you remember, Siskel and Ebert, I grew up watching them. I really enjoyed them. They made money. So there's just, I think they're pissed off because those people had to make their way up through writing and getting jobs, and there was a gate that was kept, right? Now there's no barrier to entry. Any schmo can start a YouTube channel, and if people agree or like what they say, or even don't like what they say, they can become popular, right? So they're just pissed off they can't control all of us, right? Cannot be controlled or manipulated or coerced. So that's, I think, what they're pissed off about. So what are they going to do? Vilify you, right? Vilify us. So I'm annoyed by it. Just having the historical perspective. When I hear an article like this, I think those people are full of shit. They have no sense of history, and it's hypocrisy to not think, well, what did people wrote for newspapers about film and TV? Did they not get paid? Right? I mean, it's really dumb when I hear it that way, and I think it's about control. So there wasn't. You guys remember Harry Knowles and Ain't It Cool News?
Oh yeah.
Like, that's some ancient internet history right there.
Right. That's lore, and Mahler probably knows all about it. He was the boogie of his time. Anyways, so he was ranting off on opinions, but as soon as he was courted by Hollywood, his rhetoric kind of died down. He got a little softer, throwing softballs and things, and they can't find a way to control the people, all of us here, or YouTubers, right? So what do? You call them names and make them evil. And I don't know. I think people are smart enough to see through it, but an article like that is stupid and pointless. And that's all I want to say. All right. I'll bring back Mark from Variety.
JJ Sigmund actually summed it up quite well. The totalitarian boogeyman has to be both very threatening. We're under attack and laughably inept. We're so much better than them. It's true.
Yeah.
That's the awkward middle ground they always have to straddle. And I think there's an interesting insight from this article as well, because it talks about how studios actually try to preempt these kind of fan backlashes to a degree now. It says those that talked with Variety all agreed that the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms in the first place. In addition to standard focus group testing, studios will actually assemble a specialized cluster of superfans to assess possible marketing materials for a major franchise project. It says they're very vocal. They will just tell us, if you do that, the fans are going to retaliate. These groups have even led studios to alter the projects. If it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. So it's kind of an acknowledgement that, like, they do apparently sometimes change things if it's at an early enough stage, because they know the fans are going to kick off about it.
Would that be all the canceling of the Star Wars movies that happen over time?
Probably, yeah.
Why don't they just make something good? Surprise the fans. Give the customers what they want.
There is some interesting stuff in there, like people saying that they take over maybe one of the actors or actresses' social media for a while and stuff like that. Like one, this could all be saved by not making things that are intentionally destructive towards something that people love. Yeah. Right? That's step one. Don't make something that's intentionally meant to be controversial or provocative or destroy something that has a built-in fan base. And you can already see from these decisions, they know that some of these things are going to be massive controversies, and they do it anyway. That is changing, though. I do think we've past the point now where people are trying to shy away from this more than they used to. Obviously, there's still going to be projects that have been in development for like 2 or 3 years that are coming out, or who knows. But I do think the tide is starting to turn on it.
It does feel like it. And yeah, to reference the point you made there, it does say in this article, studio insiders say they often put their talent through a social media boot camp. In some cases, when a character isn't intentionally challenging a franchise's status quo, i.e. they've race or gender swapped it, studios will, with the actor's permission, take over their social media accounts entirely. I think it's funny, actually, because I would genuinely love to know how many like social media accounts from big celebrities are actually them. I think it's going to be like 10-20% at most. The rest will be taken over by like publicity companies, PR people, all that sort of stuff. It won't actually be them tweeting things out.
Probably take Rachel Zegler's away.
Rachel Zegler, that's right, but they didn't.
I know. She did. There was an article about her just yesterday. I think it was like reinventing Rachel Zegler or something. It's like,
this is the third time.
I think it's too late.
It's the third time she's tried this.
But it's like backwards though, based on what the article was saying. It's just back.
The article is explaining away Rachel Zegler's miscues as it was just a misunderstanding and fans are toxic. It was not like
I hate
Chris. This is so fucking easy. This is so fucking easy. Just don't say inflammatory shit like that when you're like the star of this massive big Disney remake thing. Just kind of chill out. Be like thankful for it, you know. And if they try to bait you with a question, just be, you know, I felt really accepted and I'm really proud and we're really happy with what we've done with Snow White and I can't wait for everybody to see it. Instead of blaming everybody who's taken you at your own word and criticized you for that and just saying, well, no, we were just joking, and then proceed to tell lie after lie.
She's kind of gone. She's gone through
and then attach a highly charged political statement to it.
She's gone through each stage of this, like, coping process where she made the stupid statements initially when she was all full of confidence, like, this movie's going to be amazing, and like everyone just needs to accept it. Huge backlash. Went radio silent for a good 6 months to a year, then came back and did that interview with what was her name, Halle Bailey, where she was all very soft and very demure and talking with such reverence about the original Snow White and how she loved it and respected it so much. Nobody really cared about that because they knew what her real opinion was, and so now you've then got this article where it's back into defiance mode, where it's like, you just didn't understand what I was saying. And like, actually, anyone who criticized me is just toxic and racist and sexist. And that's the reason. And I'm sick of it. And so it's just like, she's gone full circle back to just, I'm going to be an asshole again. But it's funny, if you watch those interviews from the red carpet, no one really talks about how Gal Gadot just totally fucking dropped her in it and then walked away smiling. Because she's like getting interviewed and then Gal Gadot comes in like, she's not going to be saved by the prince. And then Rachel Zegler just starts rolling and Gal Gadot's like, all right, I'm going to have my beer here.
And that's one of the points I brought up in my video today was Rachel Zegler basically is like, it's really sad to see when women get torn down like this. And I've seen it all my life, all 23 years, all my career, all 4 years. And then she talks about how, and people, it's sad when they don't understand context or miss a joke. You weren't fucking joking. Now, there are elements of what she said in some of those responses that were jokes, right? In terms of Prince who literally stalks her, like that was in a joking manner. But then when you go on and explain that it's not going to be about true love. She's not going to be searching for a man. It's going to be about her being the leader that her father thought she was. Those are very serious answers, and you're also very explicitly saying that this is not about a love story and it's not happening. She went on to detail, and I'm sure a lot of people are gonna they're gonna assume it's a love story because we cast a guy in it and stuff like that. But like when they recorded those red carpet interviews for D23, 100% there was not a love story in it. With reshoots, with the massive backlash, who knows what they could have done. But she was not lying or she was not joking, or it wasn't taken out of context about some of the specifics surrounding how they wanted to change Snow White.
But she's done the same thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say there, I think the most egregious thing she said was when she talked about her co-star saying all of his scenes might get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood. You know, just laughing about it. And, you know, that's a guy's career there. And this could be his one big break. And you're just laughing about him getting cut out of the movie potentially. Like, how much of a shit are you? Like, just it creates this horrible impression of just an entitled little brat that's like gotten way more success than she deserves. And clearly, like, it's affected her ego.
Oh, big time. Big time. When she was doing an interview, she was being interviewed for Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I think it was Deadline or Collider. And I used it in the video from 6 months ago. And the guy's like, I just have to tell you, this is the greatest movie of my lifetime. And she looked at him, she's like, what? He's like, yeah, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, you're in it. It's the greatest movie of my lifetime. She's like, you sure we saw the same movie? I mean, she's trying to promote it.
Yeah, during the promotion of that, she was actually talking shit about the movie. She was talking about how she only took that job because of money, because she needed the money.
I mean, it's a pretty bad movie, so.
This is a very, I think she's 23 or 24. She has not been acting her entire career like some of these other people have. She basically, when she was like 17 or whatever, Steven Spielberg just plucked her out of nowhere, because I think she posted YouTube videos of her singing or something.
She did.
To be the star in West Side Story. So, you know, this is someone who's pretty new to a lot of this. So at one point you can kind of maybe understand where you'd get that type of entitlement for somebody that didn't work for it as much as some of the other people in the business have. And maybe for someone who wasn't trained on social media or interacting with the press the way some of these other people have been. But regardless, this is who you decided to hire, Disney. You're the ones that went out there. You wanted to have a Latina Snow White, so you went out of your way to get this new up-and-coming Latina star, Rachel Zegler. You hired a young, woke activist actress who doesn't care about your movie nearly as much as she cares about herself. And that's why she's not going to stop. That's why even when she tweets out, hey, look, we got so many views on the trailer. Thank you, guys. Oh, by the way, very politically charged statement that my co-star happens to be on the other side of. Like, this is just who she is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Whatever happened to actors and actresses who, when they would do X amount of films, 2 or 3 that bombed, that was the end of their careers? Because so far, outside of Hunger Games, the Ballad of whatever, it broke even, but everything else has been a bomb for her. But
it definitely, well, it's still a phenomenon that happens. I think it takes a little bit longer now, but it definitely still kicks in. Like, I think the example I tend to use is Jennifer Lawrence, where it was like, she did the Hunger Games movies back in the day. They didn't depend on her star power, obviously, because they were the thing that launched her career. Outside of them, I don't think she was in a single commercially successful movie that she led. You know, she was in things like X-Men, Days of Future Past, but she wasn't the star of it.
No, but they tried to push it hard in those movies eventually, which got cringe.
Yeah, but again, she still wasn't the star. She was like, they were pushing her because they were trying to make her a thing in Hollywood, and she was definitely getting all the publicity. And I think that's what they do with these starlets. They give them a push for a year or two. If it takes, great. If it doesn't, they get discarded, and that's kind of what happened to her.
But you also got to remember, like, she didn't have all those failures under her belt when they made this announcement. You know, movies take a long time to make, especially when there's a writer strike and an actor strike and fucking all these delays. So, you know, when they announced her for Snow White, she didn't have some of these failures that she now has under her belt.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence, remember, very famously, Jennifer Lawrence was getting paid more for, what was that movie she did with Chris Pratt?
Passengers.
Yeah. Like, she was getting paid a fuck ton more than Chris Pratt for that, because at the time, Jennifer Lawrence is a much bigger star than Chris Pratt was.
No, it's the gender pay gap. Women get paid more than men do in
That's
film.
right. How
terrible.
It's funny because in retrospect, like I think even then he was probably a more bankable star than she was.
I think
probably
so.
a bigger box office draw.
Maybe when the movie came out, but probably not when they signed the contracts.
Probably,
That could be
probably
true,
not. Yeah. But it is interesting, yeah. She did not turn out to be the box office draw that I think she imagined she was. And I think she did kind of buy into her own hype to some extent because she did start to come across as quite opinionated and entitled. And yeah, look where it got her, I suppose. But yeah, like that, I guess that's my point I was making there is like they do get a certain number of opportunities to succeed. And then pretty quickly when it's established, like, yeah, you're not a draw. Those opportunities get less and less, and then they just kind of die off as actors.
So they push them. So they lift them up and go, okay, fly. If you,
well, it happens to the guys as well. Like, look at look at Jonathan Majors. Like, they tried to make him a thing, and like, okay, that was kind of due to events outside of acting, but yeah, he was being touted as the next big star, and they were trying super hard to make him happen. That all fell apart, and you will never hear of him again, probably for at least a decade.
One of his film just got a release, so, shockingly. The one that had been canned, just for the release date.
Is that Magazine Dreams?
I believe so. Whatever.
Yeah, they were grooming him for an Oscar for that. That's what people were saying. I never saw the film, but yeah, that was the movie that was going to get him an Oscar nom, supposedly.
Yeah. Well, he was Kang. He was going to be the next Thanos, and yeah,
all those post-credit scenes that are useless now.
Yeah.
No, I think they should just get all the loose ends that Marvel never, they're never going to finish, and just have that character Lewis from Ant-Man explain it in some monologue. Yeah. Just tie them all together, wrap them up, and then never speak of it again. It could be a funny little short film. I don't
know. Let me ask you guys though, because
I'm
going into it. I'm going to dive right into it. Rings of Power is finally over, and we got to experience the final episode of it. There you go. I did it. Hit you with it. Yeah, Chris is like, I'm out.
I only saw the first episode.
I don't blame you.
Time for a bathroom break.
I have only watched half of the last episode, thankfully.
You saw the last half of the last episode, or
the first half of the last episode?
Oh, you missed the best part.
Set the stage, Drinker. What greatness did we get in the finale of season 2 of Rings of Power?
We got crying Sauron.
Yes.
We got the ultimate battle between good and evil. Sauron versus Galadriel. What else did we get? We got
Galadriel versus Galadriel.
Don't forget Pincushion Celebrimbor.
That's fucking hilarious.
I was glad that
someone
did get him put up on the spear.
I
did like that they got him put up on the spear, though. That was good.
That's accurate.
Yeah, it's just everything leading up to that was kind of awful. What else did we get? We got dwarves crying.
Glug.
Dwarves solo tanking Balrogs.
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure what happened there. It just kind of ended the scene.
The editing of that scene is all over the place, bro.
It
looks like they filmed it in a closet or something. It's so weird.
Good news as well. The Harfoots, I think, have finally fucked off, and I think they've just left the narrative now because they just go like, "You've got your own path to walk now. I'm leaving. Bye."
Well, that is true. After they said goodbye to the Grand Elf,
yes.
But Nori's story is leading those stores to the place that will eventually become the Shire.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing next.
I don't think I've ever had such tonal whiplash in a TV show in my entire fucking life. To go from Celebrimbor getting his fucking thumb cut off and like covered in blood, filled full of arrows, and then like hoisted up on a spear, like spitting up blood and everything, and like prophesizing the death of Sauron, the Lord of the Ring, by the way. To these fucking retards out in the desert, like, in their goofy little clothes with their stupid hairstyles, like, we have to go and find ourselves a new place to live, but don't want to go off trail now. It's like, what is this? What is this fucking show? It's absurd. It's like it's an insult. It's made by people who clearly hate Lord of the Rings. That's all I can define it as.
And it was written by J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay this time again.
When Celebrimbor was saying shit like, you know, you're gonna get defeated one day, and you know what? I reckon it'll be like one person who actually does it to you. I reckon it'll be played by Elijah Wood. I
reckon he's gonna drop one of your rings into a fucking volcano, and then you're just gonna explode. That's it's still ridiculously specific. And then, yeah, you know the thing that kind of pissed me off the most, actually, and this has been building throughout the season. Elendil, right, is probably played by the only guy who's got like a testosterone count of more than like a eunuch in this. But his actual character is the most like fucking agency-less dude I've ever seen. Like, he just wanders from place to place, just wherever the plot requires him to go. He never actually makes a decision or does anything. And it's always someone else who tells him what to do next, where to go. And fucking Queen Muriel has to give him Narsil.
Yep.
The fucking iconic sword. It has to be given to him by a fucking woman of color. Of course it does, just to make sure that like we get it.
The social justice
everything. It's just this is just like the show in a nutshell. It's like we're just gonna make sure that all of our bullshit characters that we've created are inserted into every facet of the narrative so that you know that everything good that happened in Lord of the Rings, everything that ultimately got set up came from them. Fuck off.
That was another... Sauron's just kind of, misunderstood. You're supposed to be sympathetic to him. Adar, he just loves all the orcs so much because they're all just real good boys. They didn't do nothing wrong. They're just looking for homes. It is... Can we also talk about Arondir, who got fucking gutted, shanked like he was in a fucking prison yard and left on the battlefield to die at the end of episode 7, is suddenly just perfectly fine.
This fucking retarded character just shows up everywhere as well. Like they specifically, Sauron says to the orcs, kill every elf that you see, just leave the leaders alive. Meaning, like,
not Arondir.
Yeah, not Arondir, who's just a random fucking elf fighter. Like, why have you left him alive? Because the plot requires him to be there.
What, he's like jumping around killing shit? I was like, you died. Did they forget what's going on?
I didn't think he was gonna die, but I like 100%. That's like a pretty grievous wound that he got. That's like the implication of that, and you should fear whether he's going to survive or not. They never fucking addressed it. He's just perfectly cool, and he's good enough that he has to be part of the big 3 elves. In this story. He's right there with him because he's just important too. I guess Tolkien just left out that name when he was writing these fucking stories. Holy shit.
I think it was when you had Elrond and Gil-galad. They're sitting over there and they're all captive and he's looking at the orcs. Don't burn those papers. Those are like more priceless. Celebrimbor's greatest treasures. You know what I thought of? That's what they're telling orcs. I really thought of Drinker for the moment. It's like someone telling you, don't touch that bottle. Don't take that shot. Because these orcs are like laughing. I mean, I was like, who is writing this shit? But then see,
as if the orcs are going to have respect for your cultural heritage as well. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to reason with these guys.
No.
Elrond was watching Rings of Power, and you realize the orcs are actually just misunderstood, family people, stuff like that.
Oh, dude, I was waiting for
the bad ones,
like an orc with a big old.
Please don't burn those. That was an actual orc scene. Like if an elf had been saying that, the orc would be like, fuck you. Burn it and then stab him in the gut and leave.
I was expecting a fucking orc with like a monocle and a big old white beard to be like, we must protect the text. He's right. This is information we need. Like, there's some bullshit. We're just like, what are you doing? Because the person I was watching it with, they were like, why is there so much focus on that one orc, the Glug orc? And I had to explain, it's like, oh, well, that orc has a family. And it's very sad that orc is dead. What is such a stupid show?
But did you see Galadriel's kung fu moves again? It's the second time in the season. She like high kick Sauron or something. I was like, who's the coordinator for this? The action scenes.
Her fighting is so weirdly inconsistent because at first she's just like awkwardly swinging the sword as an actress with no fight training probably would do, and like you know, it looks clumsy, and she doesn't seem very powerful or anything. And then just out of nowhere, she fly kicks him into a fucking pillar, and he just goes shooting across the screen. How could you do that all of a sudden, but you couldn't do it earlier?
Right. But he's also badass by himself from the books. The thing I didn't get is once he got into her mind, he's like, what is it? I hear your thoughts, or I know your mind. He's in there, and she's like into this haze. He's making illusions the entire time. Why didn't he just make an illusion, take the ring off? She'll still believe she has the ring, and he goes away.
Don't. When she's about to hand it to him, and he's like, and then she slowly falls back. I was like, grab it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like, oh, she's fallen off the cliff. No way.
Wait.
Like, just jump off.
He doesn't have to grab her at all. Like, he's got the power to like manipulate things around him just with the power of his mind. Like he did it with all those elf guards that tried to kill him in the previous episode, just forced them to stab each other. So he could have just like force pulled her back up from the cliff and just like, yeah, I'll have that ring, thank you. Like, there's no thought put into any of it.
You know what the problem is? When I started reviewing it in season 1, it was my first year on YouTube, and I've been thinking, I think they took so many aspects of the story. All they did was take character names and character places, and then they tried to string together things that they've heard of or read in a fucking pop-up book. But I think if you're not going to if you're not going to adapt Tolkien properly, you need people with master talent, master writers who can be able to string.
Oh yeah, dude.
Making it out of order is what killed everything, I think, because they don't have the ability these are like Wish.com showrunners.
If you're going to go off trail for a good choice of words, you need to know how. Otherwise, you're going to piss everybody off. You got to make some great shit to either replace or to add to it. Because, you know, there's still changes from the source in Peter Jackson's trilogy.
Yeah, but he did it right.
Fucking an excellent adaptation attempt, you know, like and it goes the same for a lot of stuff. Even the MCU back in the better days, a lot of it was never a 1-to-1, 100% adaptation, but a lot of it was very strong. And so it like works out that way. I was just going to say as well, George, you know, it's no fault of your own, but I'm just, everyone at the time my eyes go to your camera, I'm like, that fucking staff and that sword. The whole episode is like, look, they got the sword, look, they got the staff. It's like,
I know.
None of that is yours. You don't get
it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. When they first showed the stores, I'm like, it's the Jamaican bobsled scene, or it's like the proto ancestors, and then you have them come back. But I don't think they're coming back, actually. I don't think the murder hobbits or the stores are coming back.
It's just like my heart sinks every time the scene flicks over to those characters, and like I know I have to spend the next several minutes with them, and they're going to be doing something completely and utterly pointless.
Yep.
I mean, the whole show is pointless, essentially, but at least like when you've got the Siege of Eregion or something, it's like, okay, there's something happening here.
The thing is, Drinker, because if you trace it right, you know, they spammed it back in the first episode, the Nori's whole arc, her whole goal, she wants to see what's out there, see the world. They're like, oh no, you got to stay with us, stay on trail, blah, blah. And she's like, no, I want to see the world. And I think someone would tell you, like, just 2 seasons and she's going to discover the new world for the future that is the Hobbits. Isn't that wonderful? And you just sit there like, guys, there's like nothing we have gained from their storyline at all. No. The idea that you've even told a story and it took you 2 seasons to get her from I want to see stuff, and then she has a. Have you noticed how she never talks about the sights she sees, really? Even though that was like her whole motivation.
Yeah, when they are seeing sights of the dead, they're just complaining.
Yep, it's like they forgot that they were supposed to write her. she just.
I don't even get what her personality is at this point. She just kind of really wants to help Gandalf.
Sidekick?
That's all we got.
Randolph.
Randolph.
Are we all but confirmed now that Dark Wizard is Saruman? The fact that he said, like, I don't even want to be called Dark Wizard. That's not my name.
I can't believe Karen Hines is playing in it. I couldn't believe that when I saw it. No
I mean, like, that's you were definitely supposed to get those vibes.
The fact that he said we're 2 of 5, and it's like, well, he's not the Blues and he's not Radagast. It's just, it feels like we're narrowing it down. And the fact that they spent this whole fucking season setting up and paying off a staff and a name for Gandalf. Of course, season 3 will end with him being like, I am Saruman. Like, oh my god, I know that guy.
He said the thing.
It's pathetic.
I just kind of wish that they had... you know, when they were thanking him at the end, I wish they'd called him the Grand Wizard instead of the Grand Elf. I think that would have had a better ring to it.
Oh, well, anything would have had. This was just horrible. Grand Elf.
This whole episode as well, it reeks of we have to tie up all these loose ends that we don't know what else to do with. because like the narrative jumps to so many different places, and most of the characters are doing nothing of significance. You know, like Isildur, his entire arc this season has just been like, you know, like I kind of survived the previous season, and I need to find my way back. Oh, and now I need to go on a pointless errand to get my horse back. And like now I've met this girl that I can't be with because she's with someone else who's got no character development. And now I have to go home again. Like it's gone nowhere, and it's
and then I get home and things aren't good.
Yeah. To be clear as well, never watch the show. However, if you do, it's really fun with someone who has zero context, because when the guy is like, "I'll kill your horse if you keep acting up," the person I was with was like, "What's so special about the horse?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that horse saved Isildur from Shelob." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, I don't feel the need to explain that. I just enjoy that fact."
Just that like horse was set free by Elendil because it was causing too much of a ruckus at the camp before they went back to Numenor, and he went back into the volcano and saved Isildur.
God, this is the equivalent of the Acolyte. I have had so much fun watching YouTubers tear this apart. I'm making my own video series on it too, but just watching everyone else crap on it and finding new ways to do so has been a blast.
Could you imagine what Tolkien would think of it? I mean, he survived the bloody battle of the Somme, started writing the Silmarillion in the trenches of World War One. You know, he was a second lieutenant. Then he ends up, after he gets trench fever in the hospital, finishes the Fall of Gondolin and the Ainulindale, and he like time travels. Like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, it's crazy.
The thing is, like, I think even like he would have a lot of issues with the Peter Jackson movies.
Yeah.
So like to go from that to this,
yeah. I think he would have trouble with it, but I think he would see that Jackson loved it and tried to hold on to the spirit of.
I think it's really interesting to see that discussion happen, especially if he's willing to be open-minded about it, the whole thing, as opposed to, which I wouldn't blame him, by the way, if he was like, "Good God, this is not at all my work. What have you done?" I get that, but the other thing that I just want to see him stream, like on YouTube, Tolkien stream Lord of Ring Gollum. That would be the best. Just forcing him to play that and be like, "This is your work."
But I think he would have so many stern words for his grandson.
Oh,
like when it came to all this, like, what is this weak shit which assails my senses now? Why have you allowed this to happen?
Yeah, he comes back. He suddenly just like resurrected. He talks to the family first, and he's like, "Well, you guys know I was very anti, industry and things like that. So, what have you done with the rights to my stuff? We sold it to the biggest fucking company in the world."
It's Simon, isn't it? Like Simon's his grandson.
Yeah. Failed.
Yeah, because like I can imagine it being like given that speech like at the end of There Will Be Blood, like Christopher was the chosen one, Simon. Like starts attacking him with a bowling pin.
Remember, Tolkien was really cool. I mean, he taught a class once in a polar bear outfit, which also ordered a party. I mean, he would dress up like a knight. I mean, he was a pretty cool guy. But it's just watching this stuff. Did anybody else think the ending when you hit Gil Grabalad on top of the hill with everybody else and he pulls up his sword? I thought that was supposed to be like the Mighty Morphin time. I swear they had their rings. It's like, here we go.
I can't see how they could possibly have any kind of encouraging thought in that scenario when everything has been so disastrously horrible.
I know.
Like, I know it's like, oh, well, he's given a rousing bit of rah, and you're like, no. Have you seen the past few episodes? It's been abysmally stupid. Everyone's retarded and everyone's dead.
It's like 50% of that scene up on the hilltop is completely like awkward and stupid anyway. Gil-galad essentially has no role in the story. Like they don't know what to do with him. They know he exists and they know they have to account for him, but he's given nothing to do. The narrative is all on Galadriel and Elrond. And Arondir is there as well, and he's got no place being there.
He's not
in charge of anything.
No, he doesn't. Well, to be honest with you, though, when I saw Gil-galad in the battlefield, I was like, "What the fuck? I'm not used to this. I only know you as the guy who stands in place in that one fucking set constantly."
Who just looks at that tree.
Yeah, it's insane to see him in a different costume in a different place. I was like, "Whoa, it's incredible."
Yeah, it's just I don't think they're going to continue after season 3. I think if it goes to season 3, because they're in pre-production right now. But there was an interview that Payne and McKay gave again, I think it was to deadline, but it was 4.5 weeks ago, and it's the first time when they were asked, so how's everything going with season 3? They're like, well, we're in pre-production. He goes, well, how are the seasons going to go? He goes, that's up to the bosses. And before that, they've always said, yeah, we have our commitment, 5 seasons, we're moving forward. That's it. This now they're saying, yeah, it's up to the bosses.
Oh, interesting.
So,
yeah.
All I have to say is, sorry, I just want to say I'm not watching the show, and I'm not watching videos shitting on the show. It's not even fun anymore. This show it's so I watched that first episode. I've never been more bored. And trust me, I see a lot of indie movies. They can be boring. This show, it's really pointless. I don't even know. Are there actual fans of this show?
I think that
look, there's a few in my comments section.
There's a lot of mentally deficient people out there who will love this.
No one's even talking about, like, Acolyte is at least fun to shit on, right? Like it's because it's so ridiculously bad. But this is just boring. They're talking. So the biggest thing I heard was there was a kiss that people were pissed off about.
Yeah, Elrond and
Elrond kissed Galadriel. Yes,
his mother-in-law.
Yeah, that is lame. That is lame.
Oh, John Campia likes it.
Didn't even bother to slip her any tongue either. That was the lamest
part. Oh my god! It's just I can't. I'm sorry, guys. I'm kind of checked out of this conversation, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like now, whenever I hear Gary talk about it, because he's obsessed. Yeah. Gary knows the most. He is an expert. He's obsessed. When I hear him talking about it, I start to zone out. He really knows his stuff, and it's just like I'd rather see the thing he's talking about rather than like what we got.
The difference between like this and the Acolyte is that Acolyte, it's way easier to just laugh at because now that they've fucking retconned everything that happened before they bought Disney Star Wars, they're just fucking making shit up, right? This isn't supposed to be an adaptation of something that occurred during this time period that people are very well aware of. And what they're doing is just a complete and total, like bastardization isn't even the right word.
No, it's butchering.
There's so many things that are happening that shouldn't be happening during this time point. There's things that are getting smashed together. There's people that never met or never did those things that are being heralded as the hero. Galadriel literally stated in this episode, I've killed more orcs than any elf alive.
Yeah, right.
She made that statement in this episode.
So that's because she's so bad.
But then Adar say the same. He's like, I will make peace, my orcs. Yeah, your kindly orcs will go away and make peace forever because they're really not bad.
Mostly peaceful Mordor.
Yeah, I've been reading these books since I was 10 years old. This is nothing. It doesn't even in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, I find that like the Lord of the Rings fans, unlike like me, a huge Marvel fan or Star Wars fans that have like been watching the slop and then have gotten jaded with it. Lord of the Rings fans are just kind of completely dismissive of this show. Just like, no, we're not even dealing with this.
It does feel like the cancer that is Disney Star Wars has done damage to the brand, while it feels as though people have worked hard to just not allow it to touch Lord of the Rings in a way. Because it's a really interesting thing is what Ryan was talking about there. It's like the difference between this isn't necessarily the difference between Disney and Amazon here, but it's just an interesting thought. It's like, what would you prefer, that they take your favorite characters and then they continue the story and say this is what they did next, or they go back before and then say our story is why they did the things in your favorite thing? And it's like, I hate both of those, obviously. I'm not even sure which I think is worse because I despise them having idiot characters provide like proto versions of the lines in Lord of the Rings, in Rings of Power, as though that inspired. It's just like, no, it's not yours. Stop it. Get your sticky fingers off everything. It's gross.
I think the smartest actress in the whole series was Nazanin Boniadi, who quit. In the beginning, they're like, she's taking a year off to go, save the world, be an activist. And then 7 weeks, it's longer. 12 weeks ago, there was an article in Deadline where she's like, yes, I took a year off. I'm working to help Iranian women. And I promised that I would only take a project if it was very special. And she goes, and a month later, I found a mosquito in the ear. It's a new movie I'm doing. I'm like, did you just realize what she said? She's like, She's like, yeah, I'm gone from
I'll
this.
never
want to be
Once she
Bronwyn.
made that choice, like obviously they had to kill her off, and
Right.
yeah, that was
No, well,
awkward.
why didn't they recast? Nobody even remembered it.
I remember her name's Bronwyn. She had her tits out. She was the only fucking person that had their tits out in the show. How could you
They
not
can hire other women with boobs. It'll be fine. Like,
Could they? They haven't yet.
there is that other girl who's in
Isildur's daughter.
Numenor.
yeah, lady girl.
Yeah, like who? Like I still haven't figured out what her point is of being in the show, but like, yeah, she has big tits and she is quite hot. So
Yeah,
cast
move
her
her
up.
up.
Oh yeah.
We'll move her over.
It'd be so funny if she just fucking showed up there as a different character.
The funniest thing about the fact that they killed her off was it killed like 90% of Arondia's story. He had like nothing left. He was just related to her.
He's
like,
literally
oh,
just
yeah.
a black elf who's in love with a human, and they killed the human off.
human off.
So now he's just a black elf who doesn't really have any
He
time.
just does action scenes. He just pops up doing action stuff, and it's like,
yeah,
oh,
like
there he
spin
goes.
around, shoot some
And he
arrows,
could have
run
been like a
away.
surrogate father for what's that kid's name? Teddy.
You know, yeah, but they cut it off. Yeah,
But then they're like, well, that doesn't really fit with the black elf part. That wouldn't make any sense for him, so he can't be hanging around him anymore.
Can someone explain the love triangle with Isildur and that girl, like, and her husband, who's
no idea.
he has
Yeah.
had like
Oh.
that dude has had like 2 lines in the entire show, and there's supposed to be this like crazy love triangle going on between them. He hasn't even done it. In fact, if anything, the show goes out of its way to say that he's actually a really nice guy who cares for her and he's building a house for her and shit. And she's like, oh, but it makes me feel sick and I don't want to be with him. It's like, you know what? This is not LA in 2024, okay? There are not eligible bachelors that you can get on fucking Tinder whenever you want. Like, you're fighting for survival here. This is just, it's so absurd.
I think once she heard she was going to go away with Isildur, she was like, yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to cuck my husband. Then it's like, no, you can't come. Oh, I love my husband again.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Dude, what
She's
a
just looking
coincidence!
for a dude who's 6 foot, makes 6 figures, you know.
Just trying to find Arondir.
We're out there in the slums.
I couldn't believe he said we survived the blast. I'm like, they're not embarrassed that? Yeah, a volcano erupted, which Waldron the legend started. Come on, we can't forget him. And then Isildur's like, I survived a blast. Last season.
This show, man.
Yeah.
It's something special.
Too many stories that don't matter.
Yeah.
And this episode was especially chaotic because they had to do something to wrap up all these storylines, many of which are fucking pointless and kind of meaningless and you're not invested in. And because they needed all of them, they couldn't just skip out on the Harfoot Gandalf one. They couldn't just forget about the dwarves for an episode. They had to put everything in here, including the Isildur thing, which most people probably forgot about was even happening by this point in time. Because I don't think we've talked about him in 2 episodes.
And what happened?
It's like, and no one cares about him because he's such a boring character in this. Obviously, in the real Lord of the Rings lore, he's a pivotal character, but you'd never know it from this guy. He's boring, he's weak, he's timid, like he's played by like an absolute soy boy of an actor, and like there's just nothing to latch onto with him. I don't care where he goes or what he does. 1, because I know he can't die, and 2, I just don't care about him anyway.
But I think you just said it right there. That's been one of the biggest problems is they have characters that we know aren't going to be able to die, but they can't layer them as characters and can't write anything that's holds you in. It's like when you're watching a Better Call Saul, you know pretty much what's going to happen to him, but the way they wrote him, you still want to follow his footsteps, go on the journey. But with these characters, I mean, can you see this version of Isildur being the one that cuts the ring off of Saul? No. Oh, okay, there you go.
Dude, it'll be Galadriel. She'll do it. She's gonna do it.
No,
it's funny as well. Like the one bit that I actually got quite excited was when he fucking shoves the crown right into her chest. I had a moment of, yes, he got her. Well done, my son. You know, even it's like I know she can't die. It's just so dumb, but oh man, it was just that moment of satisfaction. Like, God, she's an insufferable character.
I don't even understand their entire interaction on the cliff. Like, why did she take off the ring and put it in her palm before she just decided to fucking like yeet herself off the back?
Like, tease you with
it. Got into her head.
Tease you with it.
He got into her head. That's why I said if he got into her head that much, just, you know, make an illusion. He kept making them like, oh, she still has the ring, but he took it and was like, adios, I'll see you. So the choices don't make sense in the show.
she's fighting him and kind of holding her own and actually kicking his ass a little bit, and then he changes into her. And I just thought, is this their way of getting around it? It's like, she's met her ultimate nemesis herself.
He should have just pulled out a gun. It would have been funnier.
Just transform into fucking Indiana Jones and pull out the gun and shoot her.
It's that kind of show that I honestly wouldn't put that past them at this point. It's just so weak.
They turned mithril into a medicine, so they'll do anything. You know? We got to save the elves with mithril.
It's vibranium. That's everything.
The 9 rings were made of blood, apparently. I don't know how that works. I'm no metalsmith, but...
Well, what happened to the Balrog? It's like he kills King Dumbass the Third, and then was like, okay, I'm taking a nap.
Like that, apparently it caused a big enough explosion that it collapsed that thing back so the Balrog can't escape now. Like,
it's like 3,000. I'll come back in a couple thousand years.
It was so weird.
The bit where, honestly, I thought he was going to say the line where the Balrog's whip comes up and like snares him around the foot and pulls him towards the edge. I thought he was going to shout, "Fly, you fool!" Like, no. Okay.
And then why didn't he use the ring? Well, put it back on. You know, use the ring against the Balrog. Might be a good time.
I guess they got different levels of power, and like I guess its abilities are more subtle than that. But
that's not true though.
Because he's banging he's killing people with that ring. He's had power. They've shown him, knocking around his strength.
That's the problem. Is he got not superhuman, but super dwarven strength with that ring. Those rings are doing things that they didn't actually do. I don't know.
Like this. If only Morgoth hadn't abused pure Sow Ronald as a child. Sour Ronald.
Oh wow, that's funny. And then we never saw Círdan the shipwright again. I think that actor's like, you got me for one show, one episode.
Yeah, it's like I shaved my beard off for you guys. What more do you want? And he just leaves.
Oh my god! I just realized. Yeah, where the fuck did he go? What was the last episode he was in? Was it 2? Was it 3?
Yeah,
really early on. Yeah,
he's still bearing a ring, isn't he?
He got the ring and then took off.
Fucking hell! Yeah, he just disappeared. How about that?
Maybe eventually he'll run into the Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Why does Sauron cry? Please help me. Help me understand. Honestly, I'd have to sit down with the writers and just be like, okay, guys, walk me through your thought process on this one, because clearly there's something I'm not understanding.
They're going to say, we saw it in the Acolyte.
Yeah. We need more emotion. We need to be able to ship them, everyone.
I don't know how these guys get work.
They probably won't after this.
No.
I think that's safe to say. Tell you what, though. Should we try and answer a few super chats? Since we're all here and we have questions for all of us. The first one here is from John Gates, who said, by marketing and budget, Rings of Power should have been a mighty stream of content. Yet the weak power of a stream brought about by an enlarged prostate is how it concludes. Just as sour, strained, and hard to get through with barely a trickle of viewership. That is a good metaphor for it, and it's less tortured than the ones that we got in the show, so hats off to you. Shan Wickram Sink says, a few weeks ago, Open Bar asked whether a Romanian... A Romanian? That's easy to get them mixed up. A Romanian should be cast as Doctor Doom. For those who don't know, Sebastian Stan was actually born there and speaks Romanian. Well, that's actually quite cool. Makes too much sense, though. Canada Plus says, hail to the panel. Somehow Velma has returned. Why? Is that thing? Is that still a thing? Is Velma
season
still
3?
Are they actually doing that?
I reviewed season 2, and I thought that would be it.
Was it? Is it like a holiday special or something? I could believe that. I don't think I've heard anything about a season 3.
For what?
Halloween.
Velma, there is a Halloween episode. That's
Halloween special.
But I don't know about a whole nother season.
It says no, there will be no season 3. Oh no, and then it says it is.
Oh, it's interesting because the reaction to season 1 was thermonuclear, and then season 2 nobody was really interested, and then everyone just seems to have like completely ignored it from this point on. I've not heard any talk about it.
Where eventually someone sends a message saying, "Drinker, are you going to review Velma season 6?" And we're going to be like, "What the?"
Yeah. Need to check this out. It's like the fact that Venom 3's coming out right about now. Why? I've heard nothing about the movie. I think I've seen one trailer maybe, and like, why does it exist? They just keep making them though. That's the thing. They keep surprising me. Robbo says, the way Joker 2 pans out reminds me of what James Cameron said after Alien 3 was released, that it's like a slap in the face to the fans because the previous movie had earned something with the audience for those characters. Pretty much. Especially with how you guys have explained it. Fox says, hey Drinker, I purchased your book and I absolutely love it. Cheers from Massachusetts. If you want to check out a good place, we have good pizza. Try Town Spa Pizza in Stoughton, Massachusetts. Can't go wrong with Sam Adams. Wow. Yeah. Sam Adams is a pretty good beer. And yeah, thanks for the recommendation, my friend. Michael Brocky says, now that Australia doesn't get new films on Blu-ray, is it worth purchasing multiple copies when importing it overseas? Just imported Godzilla -1. That's a pretty good question. I think you probably do want them. Yeah, can you not get Blu-ray anymore? What's the deal with that? Have I missed something? I don't know.
For a specific thing or what?
Well, it just says now that Australia doesn't get new films on Blu-ray, are they just like phasing them out? Are they just?
I
doing
did hear
something
something about Australia that they were basically getting rid of physical media. Yeah, Chris probably knows better. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, the Best Buy in the United States doesn't have a Blu-ray section anymore. It's really, I mean, you can get the 4K of Godzilla -1 from Japan, and you can order it at Godzilla.com. That's how I got it. So.
It says, I read something. It says Disney. It says Disney announces permanent halt to Australian DVD and Blu-ray releases.
So, are we talking like brick and mortar sort of purchases, or because they can just get it from Amazon and stuff still, right? Or
right.
Yeah, because my Best Buy doesn't have them anymore. I used to go every week, but they're all gone. The section, everything.
Oh yeah, it's everything's. Shopping for like media was fun back in the day. It just feels like the dead odds.
Everything used to be better too. That helped.
Yeah. Well, we're sliding slowly into the dystopian future. So yeah, embrace it, I suppose.
I miss going to Blockbuster like a year after a movie released or whatever, and they'd have those, like 3 for $10 sales on used DVDs or whatever. You could pick up some great fucking movies because obviously once it's been out for a while, they don't need 1 million copies of all these DVDs.
One of my favorite memories, like I've mentioned it before, but it was a Blockbuster where we are, and walked in and Shaun of the Dead was being played just daily. Like they just had it on, and I remember my dad was there to get something specific, and I just stood watching it, and I was like, what is this? Like I want this, whatever it is. My dad was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was out yet, but properly, or if it was, we weren't so aware of it. But the way you could discover good films, eh?
Different times. Slack Attack says, do you like how they mentioned both of the brothers of Isildur and Durin during the finale? Imagine how this show would have played out had they been there. That was an interesting one. Like, was Durin's brother ever mentioned before then?
There is 1 or 2 mentions. We were discussing this on EFAB because we were like, what the fuck are they doing with all like the family? Remember how many times have they been like, there are other dwarven places, significant dwarven leaders.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. We're like, huh?
I'm going to guess there's 7 of them in total.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see Durin and his brother talking about what was going on with their father instead of, Durin and Disa. But
yeah, I'm so fucking sick of that character.
Disa, especially what was it? It was episode 7, was it? When she flapped her arms and did that operatic, whatever it was, to fight off the dwarves while her husband.
Yeah, and it made all the bats appear, and dwarves are really scared of bats, I guess. But you could have played the Benny Hill tune over that, and it would have just been great comedy.
They thought impressive. They came out of her gaping vagina. That's why they were running away.
She is the Dark Knight.
Mr. Lucas says, Muller, I ordered the plush. Went to see the Lord of the Rings extended edition for the first time in cinema, and it was beautiful.
Hey, That's a great experience right there.
Mauler and the rest of the EFAP guys, you've got your Halloween plushies available to pre-order now, haven't you?
We do indeed. If you pop over to Makeship, you can grab any of the Halloween variants of all of us. Even Wolf is in there as a werewolf. Bet you didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
we worked for a while figuring that one out. But I'm a vampire. Rags is in a pumpkin. Fringy's a raven. Very suitable. And we got a hoodie. The first time EFAP has clothing. Can you believe it? You won't have to be naked as a viewer anymore. We've saved you. But yeah, easy to find. Just EFAP and Makeship, and you'll get the link if you want it.
Nice. Mr. Lucas says, open bar plushies, when? Well, I mean, technically you can kind of get them because there's drinker plushies and there's Mauler plushies, and we're the two hosts of open bar, and then the rest of the guests are just a revolving pattern. So they may have plushies, they may not. But we have a big...
make like our own alcohol at some point. So that's what we'll have to do.
I think we need to, yeah. But we're not doing Baileys, okay? You got to get rid of that shit. If we're going to do it, it's be proper alcohol, like whiskey.
Fine,
I'll
very
least gin.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen,
nice.
I'm tempted by this idea. It sounds like fun.
It's got to be a long pour whiskey or something, like in your case. So yeah, I think we could do something there. Daval says, Mauler, we believe it's time to explain the lore behind the Cosmic Chicken and the Dawn to the panel. Drinker, really looking forward to your film, and thanks everyone for being authentic as always. Thank you. And yeah, we released our Rogue Elements to the backers last night on Kickstarter, so that was great fun to see the reactions and finally get the film out there. So,
and everyone knows the Dawn. He's famous. He tried to save the MCU, but he was defeated temporarily, of course, by Captain Marvel. And yeah, just saying, Captain Marvel made like what $1 billion or whatever, and the Marvels failed. Guess which one had the Dawn and which one didn't?
True.
Think about it.
Coincidence? I don't think so. What is the Cosmic Chicken, though?
That's one of the earlier memes on EFAP. It's just the originator of the universe. I can't even remember what the fuck we were talking about. What came up with it, but there's a video for it. It's like the origin of the Cosmic Chicken or whatever. All hail.
Like that. Praise be to the Dawn. Yeah, Taker610 says he called himself Gandalf, and it was as if millions of Tolkien fans across the world cried out in unison, "Oh, good for you!" It's funny, the thing that we all saw coming like 2 seasons ago finally happened, and it's just like the most boring, predictable anticlimax
for this fucking guy. 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And we've got him his stat. It's like, can he finally have character? He's just, what has he been for the 2 seasons?
He
just
got his name and he got to sing. What else do you
sit
want?
around eating snails?
All he's done is get ping pong balled all around the place. He doesn't know what he's doing. That's just been his story. It feels like the beginning of season 3. They'll actually have to start writing a story for him.
No, he'll meet somebody else.
Like what you've described, Mauler, is like half the characters in this show.
Yeah,
like Isildur gets ping ponged everywhere. Elendio gets ping ponged everywhere. Like it keeps Arondir gets ping ponged everywhere. Like they just go where the plot needs them to be. There's no real like story for any of them.
Next season's how he gets his hat.
Yeah,
probably.
Oh, fuck, you're probably right about that one actually. Daval says, is a creator of a story always right about their story? Authors like R.R. Martin and Rowling constantly make changes that break their own lore and rules.
The easy example, I guess, would just be George Lucas with Who Shot First.
Yeah.
That's usually the one I would cite just to get people on board with the idea.
Yeah, and so, like, how do you... Because obviously it's not an absolute rule, but then there must be times when you can apply it more easily than others. Because like an author might go back and make changes that I don't know how you can put it. They don't contradict anything. It's just like they've kind of slightly altered the flow of events or the motivation of a character, but it doesn't actually like contradict what they did before. It's just an addition. But then at what point do you say like you need to stop with this because you're trying to endlessly tinker with a story?
Because when they do something that is just a strict contradiction, you cannot choose to consider both canon. You have to pick one because they can't coexist. However, when they say something like this, the silliest example, I'm low scaling it, but if they were just like, this person's hair was always black, and then they update and they're like, no, he was dyeing it the whole time. You just didn't see it was off screen. You'd be like, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, I don't know if I agree with that, but I guess it doesn't get in the way of anything, so whatever. And you can crank that up to wherever you want. Like, it's sometimes when they make certain changes, you really have to sort of play it case by case, I guess.
Yeah. It is a tricky one because it's like, you are the author, you're the originator of the work, and I guess in theory you have the ability to change things or add to it or whatever as you see fit. But then as fans, I suppose you've got the choice of whether or not you accept those changes, and you could just say, well, no, I don't agree with what you've done here. Like, I'm going to stick with the original version, and that's the canon story that lives in my head or whatever. It's like, I guess you could do that.
But weren't we just talking about that in a way with Joker? The sequel?
Yeah, I mean, it officially it is canon, but like, I'm not going to think of it that way. The first story is the story, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in adding this onto it. In the same way, I'm not interested in adding the sequels onto the OT. It doesn't make the story better. It only makes it worse. I'm not interested.
Yeah. They're easier to divorce, though, because it's a different author, effectively.
Yes. But obviously, the same author can do this kind of damage. Like, Ridley Scott's Prometheus is always an easy one. It's just like, that didn't happen. I'm sorry, Ridley. Like, that's Elseworlds is what that is.
You have any hope for Scott's Gladiator 2?
No,
because I read it. No, I know that's a silly question, but I was an article 5 days ago where he was saying that the ending of Gladiator 2 opens up for Gladiator 3. It leaves.
It does.
Ridley, just stop. Just stop making movies, Ridley. You've done enough.
Swear to God, we fast forward to fucking 2035 and we're getting Avatar 17 and Gladiator 16 or something. Let's go.
Waynorama says, I was able to watch Rogue Elements this morning and I very much enjoyed it. Just to be sure to watch out for those border towns. Cheers. Yeah, we were absolutely ribbing Travis for that. I never noticed it at the time. I think probably because I'd seen so many different versions of the movie. I wasn't even paying attention to that bit. But yeah, he's been suitably chastised for it. But it's an easy fix. It's just like changing a subtitle bit. Arkham Reaver says, Mauler, torture yourself and try Suicide Squad Season 3. The new character literally calls Brainiac a colonizer and refers to stealing as Columbusing.
No, I'm done with that game. I'm out. I did my time. It's illegal to make me play that anymore.
I've suffered
moving
enough.
on. Yes.
Aurora Uplinks. The funny thing is, I have heard the original story for Agatha as a wise old woman, powerful and teaching people from the new generation could have made for a better story. This is Agatha all along. Yeah, I mean, what we got in this episode was a bunch of middle-aged women like singing a shitty 1970s pop song.
They're very proud of themselves for the aesthetic, aren't they, when they do that?
They really are, yeah. And like, I guess it ties into this idea that this is a show made for women, where it's like you're going to get excited that they've changed costumes, I suppose. If that floats your boat, then great. You're going to see a lot of that because every episode they're going to be in a wacky new scenario where they have to wear different outfits and do some crazy challenge. But yeah, it's painful to watch. Like it's painful to watch these actresses try to interact with each other and try to pretend like they have chemistry and that there's any kind of camaraderie there. It's it's Ghostbusters 2016 kind of territory.
I can't wait for the end when they're not just a coven, they're going to be a family, you know?
Yeah, family. Kevbot says, hey, Drinker, a few weeks back you talked a bit about Cloud Atlas. I think it's an underrated gem and deserves a Drinker recommends. Thoughts? Okay, so probably wouldn't give it a Drinker recommends because I don't think it's a perfect movie by any stretch, but I do think it's a little bit underrated and I like the ideas that it plays with. Again,
I love that film. I love that film. I think it's underrated. I agree. The score is great. I mean, it was ambitious. It swung for the fences, but I agree with you. Not perfect. So, yeah.
But I like movies that try for big themes like that and have a super ambitious, complex story that they're trying to tell. It's nice. I like what they try to do with it. It doesn't always succeed, but man, I would rather they
it just got weird because one of the things they tried to do is the same cast is in every era.
Yeah.
So they race swap people with makeup and it doesn't always work. That's a little cringe, but
Halle Berry tried to turn her into a white woman in like Victorian England is a tough
it
sell.
was weird. It was weird, but I it's ambitious. I like parts of it a lot.
Yeah. Aurora Uplink says Agnes Moorehead, an actress name many would not recognize. Once she was wise, older, wisecracking mother of a witch in Bewitched, an amazing act. All right. He also says, my point is an older actress with wit and style and personality can transform a TV show or movie and make it a family movie. Why can't Marvel have one? In fact, picture a Marvel TV show with a powerful female lead who was sweet and kind, but had underlying fire like Marlon Lore, so Aunt Clara in Bewitched. Maybe Marvel should try hiring some women with a few gray hairs and who remember what the world used to be like and have their own opinions and style. Well, I mean, I can't fault the actresses in Agatha for not being old enough. Some of them are pretty old at this point. It's just the writing's terrible and they don't know what to do with them. It's
shame.
Yeah.
Listen, if I was with Aubrey Plaza, I would never hurt her.
That's good to know, right?
I just want to put that out there for the record. So if she is in fact playing Lady Death, I'm totally on Thanos' side.
It's hard to say yet, but
it's not hard to say. The fucking pop figures spoiled it.
That's fair enough. Ghost Ocelots says, are we a bird in a bar? I mean, you could be if you want to be.
Yeah.
Snex says, happy spooky month open bar. Question for the panel. What's one scary movie that you always watch to kick off October? Cheers, mates.
The original 1978 Halloween. Every time.
Good one.
That's a good choice.
Good one.
Good choice.
I'd say John Carpenter's The Thing, or
I mean, not to be generic here, but I was just gonna be like, well, I can't go wrong watching Alien. I just love it. So
it's good.
I would say the original Exorcist with Max von Sydow.
Ooh,
Yeah,
good
nice.
choices.
I think mine might be Dog Soldiers just because it's werewolves.
Oh, that's a
it's
good one.
really fun. I've lost track of how many times I've watched that movie, but yeah, good stuff.
What was the
Stormbringer
movie type we were supposed to say?
horror.
Oh,
Something
horror.
to kick off October.
Nightmare
of
Before
Power.
Christmas.
hey,
Can't go wrong with that.
Which was the werewolf movie with
Not
Gary
really horror,
Bu-
but that's like an October movie for me.
with Gary Busey? It was like Silver Bullet or Silver.
Yeah, Silver Bullet.
Something like that.
Someone in the chat said She-Hulk.
I mean, that is horrific in many ways.
Rings of Power.
Yeah. Stormbringer gifted 10 critical drinker memberships. So thank you for your generosity, man. Gio and Wares says, many thanks for having Lance on last week. It can be difficult as an indie writer to find promotional outlets. Being able to connect with Lance was invaluable. Yes, that's Lance from the Outcast Creative. So yeah, he's all about giving other like independent creators a bit more of a platform. So yeah, he has a lot of them on his channel for interviews and stuff. So do check it out. I'll do a couple more here. Hollow Toshi says, life. Okay. Jordan Pendragon. I saw an article where Alice Cooper mentioned his favorite horror films. He listed the 1979 adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot as his number one favorite. It's been a long time since I've seen that one. I remember it being all right. The effects were very like practical based, but I remember it being like just a fun little spooky horror movie. And he also says, with Halloween coming up, I might give it a watch. It's not a recommendation. I haven't seen it. I'm just curious if anyone on the panel has before and what you think. I don't know if anyone else got any thoughts on it.
Salem's Lot.
Mute, Chris.
No, I got nothing. I saw that years ago.
A long time.
Yeah.
I did watch last year during Halloween. I saw Soldier of Orange with oh my god. Yeah. Sorry.
JS Pena says, is EFAP going to roast the Birdman on his drinker vid? What's that?
the movie?
Oh no, it's the Birdman, and when he wrote the Birdman, he put a 3 instead of the E. For Birdman. I assume he must be a YouTuber. I don't know.
All right.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it is. And And Derek says, which was worse between the battle for Rings of Power and the Long Night from Game of Thrones Season 8? So I guess the battle for Eregion or the Battle of Winterfell.
I think the Battle of Winterfell is like worse in like the general scope and sense. Yeah, things have been on a decline, but Game of Thrones is still considered like one of the best television shows ever, and then we get that thrown in there.
That's
compared to Rings of Power. It's just been a shit show leading up to this.
I assume they do hire like some kind of military advisors for this, like at least people who know about medieval warfare. And I wish they would listen to them a bit more, because surely anyone would say like, yeah, the way you're doing this, like none of these tactics make any sense. Like, please just do something a bit more logical.
Yeah,
because you can make.
Why isn't Shad from Shadiversity working on that show? Why wouldn't you hire him? I'm being serious.
Because he lives
made
in
an hour-long video breaking down like the Battle of Eregion in the previous episode. Yeah, like he knows how medieval warfare is meant to be done. Like it's not that hard.
I mean, their armor doesn't look good. George Clooney put out an Nespresso commercial that I used for my last Rings video. His armor in that Nespresso commercial looked 10 times better, more realistic. He was playing a knight.
Well, they reference things like, Boromir. When you see him in the flashback in full plate armor, and it's like Gondor at its weakest versus Numenor at its strongest, and you get the stupid plastic moob armor that we get in this show. It's come on, it's just like night and day. I'd love to know what the budget got spent on.
And it was $60 million an episode for this season.
That's some impressive money laundering right there. I think what I'll do is probably finish up there, though, gents. I want to say thank you for joining us here for Open Bar. It's been great to have you guys on and to rant a little bit about Rings of Power with you. So.
Well, that's good. I was gonna have to leave in a little bit because I got to go see Joker 2.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which I'm
can't
really
wait to see that tomorrow.
You guys' feedback.
Yeah, really built the hype up for it.
Yeah, I bet you'll enjoy it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this, and everyone who sent in your super chats. Thank you for your generosity, and as always, we will catch up with them shortly within the next few days. Just as a little FYI as well, I'm going to be away next week, so there will be no Open Bar next week. But normal service will resume the week after. So, but for today, that is all we've got for now. So go away now.
Bye.
Bye.
bye-bye.